said feminism is neutral.
Here's what actually happened.
The foundation of all knowledge.
I'm really mad that
What difference does it make, right? What
Stop.
The deregulation of the industry is obviously going to cause more of that industry.
And to lubricate the trust connection between people until they have enough.
Yet we could still look at biological reality in determining who's a female, even if there are.
Why don't you denounce feminism the same way you're denouncing capitalism? If you don't...
For something to be objective, it needs to be verifiable. And you can't verify...
If I make a claim as a political pundit, it is true that I definitely could be wrong. That you're promoting, right?
Ideology is the main tenet of politics, right? This is my ideology. So 2015, anyone go back and watch the footage? The first GOP debate.
Cool, Robert. Oh, that? With a crowbar, you said.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I'm so excited after this weekend. We all had an impromptu crazy stream, and now we're back to our normal streaming hours. Welcome back to Moderator Monday. I am Sara the Raging Tomato. This evening, I have with me Eli Nix, Martae Ruelas, Whick TV, and of course, Ukerist with his first time on an official panel this evening. The question of the evening is, does Christian nationalism strengthen moral and cultural cohesion in a nation? Eli, would you like to kick us off with your opening statement, please?
Sure would. Okay. Tonight I'll be arguing the affirmative for the proposition, does Christian nationalism strengthen moral and cultural cohesion in a nation? I'll be using the United States as my primary example. Before demonstrating how Christian nationalism achieves this, I would like to first point to the lack of moral and cultural cohesion in the zeitgeist today. If moral cohesion refers to shared values and beliefs, the dichotomy between the large population of both those who seek to regulate or even criminalize pornography and those who would encourage women to start an OnlyFans before they are old enough to drink would provide substantial evidence for its absence. If cultural cohesion refers to a shared collective identity, recent events showing citizens standing in solidarity with non-citizens waving foreign flags on American soil in front of National Guardsmen who are sworn to protect their country from foreign threats certainly showcases a similar dichotomy. All this to say we are more divided morally and culturally now than perhaps ever before. It could be said that who or what is exactly to blame for this heightened national division is incredibly nuanced and multifaceted, and the remedy even more so. However, in my argument today, I will be explaining both rather simply. The blame is multicultural secularism that abandoned the Christian ethic and the moral relativism by which this movement was guided. The cure is embracing a culturally Christian identity through its dominance in political and social life and applying the objective moral standard that comes with it. I will now demonstrate how moral cohesion can never be made through a subjective moral lens, but only through an objective moral standard. If we can define morality as ascertaining the difference between what is good and what is evil, and the standard we use to do so is any individual's feelings or opinions of what those things are, then no particular distinction can be made between two competing individuals' moral conclusions. This is not a meaningful distinction at all, but rather an unjustifiable emotional assertion. Through this paradigm, my opponents actually have no epistemological basis by which to ground their opposition to Christian nationalism, at least not one that could invalidate ours if we were to simply use the same methodology. Only an objective and rigid standard by which we can determine right from wrong can we make informed decisions that we can be unified under politically and culturally. If Christian nationalists succeed in securing dominance in social and political life, the application of our objective standard will thus be organically cohesive. This can and will be done through the current democratic system, so those who resent, dissent, and protest with their subjective grievances can either yield to the will of the people or, frankly, kick rocks. Besides, as I just pointed out, if morality is nothing more than individual preferences accumulated collectively through mass consensus, then by their own standard, they have been voted out. When it comes to cultural cohesion and a shared collective identity, the Christian worldview that would be spearheaded by Christian nationalism has tried and true pragmatic results. Christianity is the ultimate blueprint for strong families and strong communities, which are the root prescription for nearly all issues our current society is facing. If it can be philosophically shown that these things are objectively good, it can be evidentially shown Christians are historically good at it. Those who would seek to dismember families through promotion of divorce, redefining marriage through homosexuality and polygamy, and cease reproduction through abortion cannot say that they support strong families or communities because of these antithetical behaviors. When a nation sources its identity in its families and communities, we begin to collectively share a mission of success and establish a neighborly kinship. And the fall of our cultural cohesion began when we chose to believe that diversity and individualism was our strength rather than these principles. In conclusion, a Christian dominance in culture and government would restore cohesion through shared structure and recognition of objective truth. This is not brought about through tyranny or brute force, but through a grassroots shift of the social paradigm through dialogue and debate like the one we'll be engaging in tonight. These efforts will hopefully lead to people's conversion to the faith, or at least an acceptance of its ancient moral ethic. I look forward to showing how Christian nationalism is the best and only alternative to the failed experiment that is the rejection of Christianity in modernity.
Thank you, Eli. And Martae, I hope you're with us. Yeah, Martae, to you, sir.
Okay, I'm not going to be long. So, Whick, we meet again. Ukerist, funny name, but not like that at all. So I'm going to begin by saying we want to see a world of Christian ethics. We absolutely do. And a world of Christian ethics we want to live has to be enforced. Has to. Then you have to have Christian politicians to enforce this. There should be no way Christians shouldn't be enforcing this as a way of life by preserving these Christian tenets in society. We want people in powerful positions who share our ethical framework. How would this be bad? Libertarians and secularists do everything they can to undermine this. This is why progressives end up with power. They don't simply care. So as a nation, we bought the big lie. And this lie is that Christians can't and shouldn't be in power. They shouldn't rule anything for that fact. And being the most Christian means that you shouldn't rule anything. So Christians should be constantly persecuted while everything we love is torn down, stripped, taken away, torn from us. They want to destroy our traditions as we see marriage warped and destroyed right before our very eyes. Why are libertarian, secular, or liberal ethics better in any shape or way from any other ethics that you would presuppose in this debate? I'd love to hear it. We, under Christian ethics, don't believe that might makes right, but we do understand that might makes. We can get into that later and tangle a bit. Individual liberty without virtue is dangerous. That's my whole point. Each one of our colonies had a state religion. State religion was intact even years after the ratification of the Constitution. I'd really love to hear your argument and see if you can replace this with anything better. I concede my time.
Thank you, Martae. And Whick, to you.
Okay. It's going to be exciting. Does Christian nationalism strengthen moral and cultural cohesion in a nation? That is a question at hand for this debate. The answer, especially in the context of America, is clearly no. Christianity in and of itself is not culturally or even morally cohesive. Different denominations view different acts as moral or immoral, respectively. Praying to saints, for example, is seen as idolatry by some Christian denominations and perfectly fine by others. Christians in Norway have an entirely different cultural experience than Christians in the American South, who have an entirely different cultural experience than Christians in Utah would. The idea that Christian nationalism, whatever that means, would somehow be more culturally cohesive when Christianity isn't culturally cohesive is farcical. We have plenty of examples of entirely Christian communities devolving into fractured elements, leading to cultural divides and, in some cases, even warfare. And I can cite to you the Reformation and the wars it sparked, the French Wars of Religion, the 30 Years' Wars in Central Europe, where 4 to 8 million Christians were killed by each other, the Wars of Capelle, the Peasant War in Germany, literally hundreds of years of conflict sparking from religious differences in culturally Christian nations. And I will also add, the first ever murder, Cain and Abel, was done within an entirely, again, culturally cohesive family, a Christian family, if you will. Christian nationalism will not make us more culturally or morally cohesive. It never has, and it never will. I see my time.
Thank you, Wick. And Ukerist, to you.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to begin with a question, which is whose Christianity and which nationalism? In defining Christian nationalism, you have to define both. I didn't hear a definition of nationalism specifically. So what is nationalism? What does it mean to have a Christian form of it? What is a Christian nation? How would we know when we found one? How would we know when we have one? For that matter, who counts as a Christian, and what will the world look like when my opponents achieve their form of Christian nationalism? I think that's what we'll be arguing about today. So the debate here is about whether Christian nationalism increases moral and cultural cohesion in a nation. And I expect that we'll see in the course of this conversation, my opponents are going to try to say that Christian nationalism is sort of like, well, if everybody agreed, everybody would agree. That's cultural cohesion, so we win by definition. But if the claims my opponents were advancing were as simple as, well, it would just be good if there were more Christians, or even as far as policy should be informed not just by my subjective morality, but in fact by theology, then this debate wouldn't actually be happening. We already had words for that. We had Christian conservatism. We had the moral majority. Christian nationalism is a term that has emerged as a pejorative first in the 80s and then more recently, and now is a term that people like my opponents want to own and defend online that is far thicker than just more people should be Christians. So first, what does Christian nationalism consist in? Is it just a common theological grammar shared among the populace, where the dominant form of Christianity has extensive influence over public policy? Or is it some sort of widespread, deep personal piety that eventually has some influence on voting behavior and then down the road policy? Neither of those, I don't think, count as distinctively Christian nationalists. But if what my opponents want is the first, then I think we might end up in the world of Scandinavia, right? Where public churches move with the morality of the times and public policy shifts with the winds accordingly. If it's the second, well, I don't think we need to undertake any grand public efforts to foster that kind of personal piety. We need to hope for conversion, as they already mentioned. But if, as I expect, my opponents are going to suggest that any examples that Wick has brought up of Christian nationalism in history have happened because of states fostering the wrong kind of Christianity, then I'll suggest to you that the debate is sort of already won on our side, that if what's required for ideal Christian nationalism is some sort of widespread Eastern Orthodox revival and an accompanying upheaval of American Protestantism, not to mention American secularism, then I expect somewhere between their ideal Orthodox utopia and the present day, we will experience a dramatic lack of cohesion, dramatic unrest, untold, unknown variables along the way. In other words, if my opponents want to argue, I don't know if they will, but if they do want to argue that cohesion can only be achieved by a sort of internal moral and religious civil war by way of Eastern Orthodox supremacy, then I'll go ahead and take the W on the debate question. For my part, I'm not going to make my opponents sign on to this, but I think the best definition of Christian nationalism is the one offered by its defender, Stephen Wolfe, in his book, The Case for Christian Nationalism. He says that it's a totality of national action consisting of civil laws and social customs conducted by a Christian nation as a Christian nation in order to procure both earthly and heavenly good in Christ. And my objection to that definition would largely center on how we define a nation or an ethnos, the bounds of it, especially as Christians attempting to reason politically in light of certain Christian principles that I think actually cut against nationalism as a guiding politico-theological principle, namely that though Christians are to love their homes and their families and their inheritances and protect them and foster them, they're also to have regard for the stranger and the foreigner in a way that I think can properly be described as xenophilic rather than xenophobic. And so whatever my opponents defend here today, I'll just say now that most Christian nationalism that you encounter out in public, as it's defended, defined, and debated online or in text, in blogs, in books, it's closer to pagan romantic German nationalism than anything that I can find articulated and defended in Christian history. In fact, I think some of the greatest proponents of nationalism in the 20th century are explicitly critics of Christianity for this reason. They think that its universalism presents as an equalizing, democratizing, anti-nationalist force in politics. And so I look forward to seeing where my opponents fall on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ukerist. As a kind reminder to the audience, we are going to get through the debate, then we will move into our closing statements, read and respond to your kind super chats, and then, of course, your favorite part, we will move into open panel dumpster fire. Gentlemen, I leave the floor open to you.
So it's funny, Whick opens up with saying that, oh, there's no cohesiveness because Cain and Abel. Of course, we have this example, and brothers fight a lot. Things happen, but we can use this as a lesson, as something that's a demonstration as to what not to do. Matter of fact, that incident has caused more cohesion than anything else. Dare tell me any time when in the classroom somebody is asserted that they're a boy when they're really a girl. How has this been cohesive in society in secular nations? We have people fighting over rainbow flags in classrooms. I don't see any cohesive over this. This battle's ongoing. What lesson is to be learned from this? If we look at Cain and Abel, we can learn a lesson. Matter of fact, this lesson is still being learned right now to better a society as to what happens, a cause and effect in the self-betterment. So if we look at this, we can look at this as tenets that are part of Christian ethics. And matter of fact, since Ukerist brought up, what is Christian nationalism? He doesn't have an idea, but he did bring this up, right? And I do understand that, but I'll give my definition. Christian nationalism is a governance by Christian values in a nation. I know, overly simplistic, right? I'll just leave it at that and pass it off to Eli if he wants it.
No, let's stick on that. If your definition of Christian nationalism is simply that the nation is governed by Christian values, that is what I would argue, something that we've had for a long time in America. You may not think that we have it today, but we have had it for a long time. If that's all you want by Christian nationalism, welcome, brother. You're a liberal. You are a liberal who wants liberal values. You want to use
completely
power,
fallacious.
Hold
on. Let him finish.
Isn't a Christian value to actually have courtesy and respect others when they're talking? I would hope it would be. Regardless, again, if all you want is simply to have more Christians in power, bravo. We have currently, as exists, a way to do that. You can go and persuade others to be more Christian, and I encourage you to do so. I have no problem with Christian morality. I think it's very good in many respects and in many ways. Again, if that's all you mean by Christian nationalism, that's just liberalism by another word.
No, I think that we mean a dominance in the social and political life of the country. So it's not just having Christians around. It's an actual dominance of the zeitgeist and of the mind of the country in general. So that would not fit the definition.
We're talking about enforcement also as well, too. So
yeah, okay. I want to talk about what that enforcement looks like, but I think it's kind of funny though that like you let off by being like, well, since Ukerist wants to pull this, well, what's Christian nationalism card? I guess I'll have to define it. Like that isn't the debate, right? So we need to know what Christian nationalism is if you're going to argue it's creating this cultural cohesion. That was just kind of a weird way to open. I would like to know your definitions. I'm trying to make sure I'm not knocking down straw men, but I was curious about something in your intro, Martae. You seem to assume that the only alternatives to Christian nationalism are either secularism or libertarianism, and I'm curious why you think that, because when I look at the history of Christians wrestling with political thought from, Jesus onward, I see a pretty rich tapestry of a variety of opinions on this issue, from some people suggesting Christians shouldn't be involved in politics at all, others suggesting we need some sort of actual theocracy, some union between church and state, others suggesting something more like Christendom, where you have the emperor being, disciplined by the church, etc. Like, so I just don't know why you would say, well, Christian nationalism is the only option unless you want secularism or libertarianism. I didn't hear either.
Did I ever say only option? That
you seem to present those as the choices. You're like, well, secularism and libertarianism have nothing to say against this. Okay, well, you seem to assume that that's the only thing that we can.
You're actually making the assumption, because I've never said that. That's never left my mouth. What I've done was I've given you a few options. Now, if I went ahead and sputtered atheists, agnostics, I'd be here like for an hour, right? But to cut everything short, I gave a few examples, right? In order for us to continue on with this conversation, I can't have a whole diatribe of like a litany of examples, which I can. There's many. But I never presented this dilemma of like, oh, there's only this and that. What I'm doing is I'm opening the floor to give you some examples to give way for this conversation by telling you that this is optimal. That's all I'm saying. That's all I've said. And I was very concise when I said this.
Asserting it, you need to prove it.
Correct. This is optimal. And I've asked the question, and I've actually posited this. Can you tell us why Christians shouldn't rule and use force? And we can get into this the same time. As a politician, right? There's no way that you can separate religion from state anyways. Anytime you have a politician who says, I believe in God and all my ethics come from God, you are to rule based on how is he wrong? How is that separating church from state anyways? And he is using the enforcement arm of law enforcement, military power to do this and everything else underneath his Christian ethical system.
Well, sure. So,
no, go ahead. Sorry.
I would just say, I think your definition is overly broad, and I think this is why this debate is happening. I think this is why Christian nationalism is such a hot, contentious topic, because you say Christian nationalism is a governance by Christian values in a nation. That could take a lot of different forms. So let me just give you one example, right? So I think you could imagine, right, somebody having an idea that we need to top down create some sort of propaganda that convinces everybody that we're right and those secular libs over there are wrong and our way's better and healthier and everything. And that might be true, actually, all the things that the propaganda is saying, but it is a kind of propaganda. And then we need to gain some power, even possibly if we're not in the 51% majority or more, and enforce our values if we have the politicking opportunity. You could also alternatively have somebody who is a Christian, who is elected to office or appointed to some high station in a non-liberal democracy, who says, how can I, as a just ruler, carry out Christian values in my work, which is much less social engineering kind of question, right? I hope you can see why these two things are different and why Christian nationalism comes off to people as this sort of like social engineering kind of project rather than a call for simple Christian faithfulness wherever you find yourself in power or influence.
But
right?
do you think that the same kind of social engineering and propaganda hasn't come from not just secularists, but anti-Christian organizations? I mean, this is a pushback to that. I think that if there's going to be those kind of social engineerings, there's going to be those kind of propagandas, we should do it with the moral ethic that actually has a prescriptive value. So that's why I want to ask you, Ukerist, as a Christian, when we talk about nationalism, at least in the way that I'm looking at it and I'm defining it, we're looking at the dichotomy between what is patriotism, what is nationalism. Generally, what I found is that with the definition of nationalism, it's not just pride in the country, but a superiority within the country, right? So when we put Christian in front of that, we're saying that Christianity is the superior moral ethic. And I would like to ask you as a Christian, what ethical system do you find to be superior to the Christian one?
I wouldn't say there is any ethical system superior to the Christian one because I'm a Christian, but the nationalism part is sort of what I'm grappling with, right? So one, the superiority question I think is really interesting, but sort of what are the bounds of a nation and what constitutes it? Who's in, who's out? These are sort of fundamental political questions that nationalists grapple with quite extensively. I don't always hear Christian nationalists grapple with as well. So
we're really bearing kind of like the major question that I think that gives the lie to Christian nationalism. Which type of Christian are you, right? Remember that scene in the movie Civil War where the guy, like, what type of American are you, right?
Yeah.
Next to the pit of bodies. I think that's going to be the question of the day. Which type of Christian counts as a Christian nationalist nation? Do Mormons count? Are they Christian in your worldview?
Wick, I want to say,
Catholics
I think
count. Can I just finish?
Oh,
right.
Yeah, sorry.
The Catholics count as Christians in your worldview? How about a Protestant? Do they count as Christians in your worldview? Right. And so this question of which type of Christian are you is going to see the destruction of any moral kind of cohesion you think that you can bring, or any kind of cultural cohesion that you think you can bring. Now I'm done. You can respond.
Well, yeah, I disagree with that fundamentally. Your whole opening was incredibly easy to debunk because there's tons. Yeah, whoa, you got on me for interrupting and then did it about 3 seconds in. Hold your horses. Anyway, we've got Protestants, we've got Catholics, we've got Orthodox, but we have a unifying factor, and it's the Nicene Creed. And we agree on a policy level way more than we would ever. When was the Nicene Creed formed? At least in our church, we have it within the first 7 ecumenical councils. So yeah, there's different variations of the Nicene Creed. I don't have it off my head, but it's not relevant to this debate. It's not relevant to this debate. No, you know what? Hey, don't get on to me for interrupting and then interrupt whenever you say refute it, and then I get 5 seconds in and you interrupt me. So how about we don't do that?
Is it the
no? You're not going to tell me why I'm wrong when I haven't finished my sentence, buddy. How about cool it? No. Come on, that's outrageous. That's outrageous to bitch about interrupting and then do it 3 seconds in. We agree on a policy level way more than we disagree when it comes to things like abortion, gay marriage. Oh yeah, we do. Gay marriage, the nuclear family, all of these things that drive an actual cohesion. Even the Mormons, if they want to hop on the bandwagon for Christian ethics, if they want to stand by all those things that are actually going to push away from degeneracy, go ahead. They can hop on, but it's going to be a Christian moral standard that comes on top at the end of the day. There's way more Protestants that are sympathetic to the Orthodox position or even to the Catholic position when it comes on to getting buses and going to pro-life marches, okay? So, this is something that I think is a non-issue. I don't think that Christian nationalism is going to be debating over praying to saints. I think it's going to be making sure that we don't see homosexual sex acts in the streets during pride parades. It's going to be not seeing marriage redefined as a polyamorous homosexual entity, but something that is within the church. These are all things we can get behind. So this idea that because there's different beliefs that we don't have a shared moral ethic is ridiculous.
The shared moral ethic that the people in after the Nicene Creed, I would remind you, ended up killing each other for hundreds of years. So this idea that yours is somehow going to be special, right?
How does that apply in modernity?
You just haven't tried it correctly yet, I guess. Like you're very communist in this, right? Like
how does that apply in modernity?
We just haven't done communist correctly ever. Our way is certainly going to be better. Our way is certainly going to work this time. This time it will lead to peace, prosperity.
So let me just ask you this way.
Again, you don't have a single historical example where you have a Christian nationalist nation that doesn't descend into internecine warfare or in some cases just becomes more liberal over time.
Wick, we have more examples of secularism destroying society more than Christian society. Look at Mao, look at Genghis Khan. We have tons of bodies that hit the floor, not to reference music here, but I'm just telling you right now, I mean, right now it just sounds like you guys are backed up into a corner right now because it sounds threatening to you, and I understand because you want the right to cum, right? Your right to cum shall not be infringed, Wick. Who am I to infringe on that, right? But in comes the Christians taking away this right for you to cum and say, oh, John wants to go ahead and suck dick at night and then cum to pornography and then act like a saint on the Raging Tomato right now, whenever, right? But I'm just telling you right now that we need something across the board, and what's cohesive right now is Christianity, because right now my partner Eli has demonstrated that it's not cohesive at all.
You can't get upset.
And Wick, I just want to bring this up. So you're saying that if by our definition of Christian nationalism, which is the Christian ethic having a dominance in the social and political life of the country, that you're saying that will cause Protestants and Orthodox to kill each other in the streets over icons praying to saints? You said mass deaths. You said it will cause, what did you say?
Christian nationalism, right? If your definition of Christian nationalism is simply that you want to elect Christian leaders and you want to promote Christian ideology, that can take place in a liberal worldview. That does not require a change to our system in any way, shape, or form. All you have to do is convince people to vote your way, and you can have it happen.
Okay.
That's the strength of liberalism, right? But also, right, what you sneak in, and what I think Martae mentioned in his opening, and he's referred to several times, and I think we should get to this now, is the enforcement mechanism. And that enforcement mechanism, right, that is what is going to be the driving, dividing wedge issue, because one group of Christians will seek to enforce their will over another group of Christians, and it will lead to bloodshed, because religious wars, let me tell you, are far more of a bloody struggle than anything else.
I want to hang on. I just have to
First of all, I want to. Oh, sorry. I want to correct a couple things that he just said. So, first of all,
there's a lot of things I want to correct that y'all have just said. So,
okay, well, you can wait a second. He directed that towards me.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Eli, and then we'll kick it right back to you, Chris. How's that?
Gotcha. So again, his definition was electing more Christians and something else. Neither one of those things included dominance in the social, cultural life, and dominance in the. It's not just electing them. I know we can still do that, but it's a more of a domineering presence where the collective identity leans on a Christian ethic. So now, here's the second part. Is you said we don't have to change the system. We're not advocating for changing our democratic system. Yes, it would be through the conventions that we have, through the electorate, through democracy. But this would be a more totality of a pushing of the ethic, not something that, well, when you say we already have that, but then you look and you see what is actually having the cultural and social dominance of today. What's America really known for? We're known for Trump, wet ass pussy, a lot of really nice rap culture. That's not what I want America to be known for. Okay, I want it to be known for something deeper and more righteous than that. And yeah, we're going to use democracy just fine, but you still strawmanned and totally misdefined exactly what we've said in those definitions. But let's go to you, Chris, to see what he had to say.
Or did Martae say, or did he not say that there would be enforcement?
Do we enforce laws?
Okay. do you think that he means enforcement in the same way that we enforce laws? And
Yes.
what laws would you have that would enforce Christian ethics?
Well, so for example, I think on a personal level that the state should be, it's also can be what things we don't enforce, right? Because this is a really big dichotomy about the misappropriated idea that Christians are going to impose their will through law, when what actually happens is
enforcing Christian dominance.
Yes, no, I'm talking about politicians informing their decisions based on their Christian ethic, which
you can't have it both ways, brother. You can't say that we're not going to enforce it. Like, you just complained that people are saying, well, they're complaining of us enforcing our Christian ethics, but
no, you didn't let me finish.
Argument is that you're going to enforce Christian dominance through law, right?
Yeah.
And through whatever other enforcement mechanisms that Martae was alluding to, which he still hasn't gotten to. But I will pass the mic to my friend Ukerist, because I feel like I'm interrupting him, and I don't.
Thank you, Wick. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just I don't know why Martae brings up Kuming, as if I maybe somebody can wind back the tape and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think either of us so far has even appealed to like rights and liberties. Like, that has not been part of the conversation at all, right? We're attacking your positive claim. We're suggesting that you think this is going to bring about this great cohesion. We think there are cracks in that argument. Neither of us is sitting here defending our right to cum, so I'm not sure why you're just throwing that out there. Maybe you'll say, oh, you weren't really saying that. It was just an example again, but you seem to be imputing things to us that we're not arguing. This again, broad category of governance by Christian values in a nation. I think that where Wick and I are getting hung up, right, is it seems like, well, at least Martae, Eli didn't bring this up specifically, but arguments around this will often bring up, especially in the American context, that we did have established churches in the states even after the ratification of the Constitution. Great, very interesting. 2 points on that. Wick is suggesting that what you all are proposing will eventually lead to conflict. I question why you bring up established churches within the states if you aren't supporting that. If you are supporting an established church, that would seem to require at least each state, or maybe the whole nation, because we're talking about nationalism, to determine which churches count, which get public support, and which don't. So that will introduce theological questions, and so that will introduce theological conflict in the political arena. So we're suggesting that might bring about some kind of conflict. And then the question Wick was really honing in on that I think is most important, right? Eli, I think you hammered this really well right at the end of your introduction, right? You said what we're talking about is Christian dominance and culture, not through force, right? You've disavowed the idea that we're going to convert at the point of the sword. Great, awesome, we're on the same page. But you say this might happen through conversion, or at least acceptance of the ethic, even if they're not Christians. Awesome. But then what is the question that we're hammering home? So when you talk about enforcement, when you talk about the laws we will have, when you talk about working within our institutional structure, what does it look like afterwards? So real quick example, and maybe you can respond to this, you don't have to. Daddy Andrew likes to bring up the 19th Amendment, right? So if we got enough cultural Christian force on your guys' side that said women shouldn't vote, we need household vote, we abolish the 19th Amendment, would you support any sort of institutional reforms that would make it more difficult to reinstate the 19th Amendment should the Democratic winds shift the other direction? Like, what sorts of institutional changes are you looking at once you achieve that dominance and that enforcement? That, I think, is what concerns us, yeah?
Yeah, Ukerist, I want to address this real quick because you pointed out that I was just making some claims and saying, oh, cum for no reason. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because the whole topic is cohesion. Right now, kids can point and then click I'm 18 and log into certain sites, even though they're not 18. Do we have a cohesion on this? No, it doesn't even exist. People hold on to traditions in American, right? In America values, we have traditions that have been passed down. These traditions are being torn down. Look at Dawkins' Lament. Right now, we have immigrants coming into our nation, twisting the narrative, twisting traditions that we have, warping everything else. Do you think it's going to be the same America if we keep allowing this? Right. So now our traditions are getting warped and warped and warped. We're secularists are doing a really great job. That's what I'm pointing to. We have corn everywhere, parades with sex acts on the streets. This is considered progress. We have a feces finder in LA right now. That's ridiculous. So people are sacrificing everything for more butt sex, but not more duty. That's the last thing that people want is more duty. You're not fighting for this. And that's what I'm pointing to, because you haven't yet, even though my partner Eli and I have begged this and asked and pleaded for what's more optimal, you've yet to get this, and you've danced around this whole topic.
I can
conceded
right at the beginning. Yes, what's more optimal than Christian ethics? I agree Christian ethics are optimal. The question is how we go about actually living those out and enforcing those on a political prudential level. It's not a question for me, at least. It might be with Whick. Hold on. So no, hang on. You're attacking people who aren't here right now, right? So I support age verification laws. I don't think that's Christian nationalism, right? So would you agree first, real quickly, and then I want Eli to, or both of you.
But you want cohesion of Christian ethics.
Hold on. Okay, good, so would you agree the state right now in America, right, is a kind of pluralism, right? We have pluralism. Anybody can believe what they want. They can vote however they want, right? That's where we are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so where I think Whick and I are finding friction here is what you're suggesting is a move from the status quo to something quite different that you assume is going to increase cultural cohesion. What we're suggesting is that whenever you get some sort of broad movement in a sort of, let's call it politically radical direction, because what you guys want is very different from what the majority of Americans want, at least right now, that is going to create some conflict, right? So we're at least moving from pluralism to a different situation that is going to create kinds of conflict. Now, you are arguing that down the road it's going to lead to cultural cohesion. Great, we can hash that out. But I think you're missing that point, right? We're not saying that America right now is perfectly cohesive and we need to preserve everything about it. You're just making that up.
Well, and this is the problem is, I mean, does cultural and moral cohesion mean zero conflict? Is that even possible? Is that even possible to have a nation with zero conflict? Can we have moral and cultural cohesion? And yeah, there still be pockets of conflict in the country. That's human nature. But when we talk about cohesion, we talk about something that is fixed, rigid, and unmoving that we generally, as a collective, fall back on. I don't believe in a fake kumbaya. 100% of everybody is in a blissful state of agreement. I think that's foolish. But what we're talking about is, instead of as you talked about with the 19th Amendment, I want to address that specifically. So let's say that we have what we're talking about, a social and political dominance, and then that dominance is so strong that it's not affected by the winds of change, as you talked about. That yes, in our pluralism, anybody can go either way, but the cohesion has become so strong through the movement that in the next 100, 200 years, such a thing would be unfathomable to go back on. So let's say we repeal the 19th Amendment, and yes, we put measures in place in order to not have it come back. But this is something that's voted on, something that's agreed on. Now.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
God
That's such a good freeze
That's
mode,
okay. I can do 1v2. I mean, I'm ready.
Yeah, he'll come back. We'll give him just a second.
Yeah, once he gets back. But to fill the time, right? Again.
Wait, hold on. He's back. Wait.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry about that.
You left off
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So, can someone remind me what the last thing they heard was?
You said that you might, with that overwhelming majority, put in measures to make it harder to make that change in the future.
Right, yeah. But what we're doing is we are falling back on a rigid ethic. We think that the kind of cultural zeitgeist mentality that, hey, we can, the winds can change in whatever direction is the problematic part of the lack of moral cohesion we have in the country, that there is so many differing opinions, morality is subjective, but whenever as a culture, whether you're a rigid believer in the Sky Daddy or not, you say, hey, our culture is kind of generally leaned toward this culture's ethic, and it works, and it has worked, so we're going to keep doing that.
Again, no two different denominations of Christians share a culture. When you say you have this fixed, rigid moral framework, as soon as you try to decide and hammer that's the specifics of what that is, your system will break down.
Okay,
because
that's completely false.
That is just
I know you think
completely.
I know you think that if Protestants and Catholics get on a pro-life bus that they're just going to start stabbing each other.
They killed each other for fucking hundreds of years, brother.
I know, not in modernity.
I brought in Kong and everybody else that's created more wars, more violence, more bloodshed.
Secularism.
Bodies hitting the floor. Remember, I brought this up, but you negate all this.
You are arguing that your Christian cultural cohesion will be better. And you have yet to demonstrate that. I keep asking, and you keep refusing.
Okay, so let's go over what we agree on. Let's go over what we agree on. Do we overwhelmingly agree on the triune God? Let's say between Protestants. We're not talking about Mormons.
Protestants, Catholics, yes.
Protestants, Catholics, and Orthodox. Yeah. Do we overwhelmingly agree on the triune God?
Not really.
Okay, so you don't know what you're talking about, and you're irrelevant.
Do we all overwhelmingly believe that Jesus existed? As Christians.
Protestants and Catholics don't overwhelmingly agree in the triune God.
Should you be praying to saints? Which day do you celebrate the Sabbath?
How does that affect legislation or social cohesion, for that matter?
Again, you look at these, specific.
Do Protestants want to
question
kill me for praying to
of
saints?
There are
hey,
plenty of
I don't know if
people
you
who
know about
would
this
now.
guy called Cromwell, but
where's that? Hey, wait, hold on. Can you give me a demonstration of Protestants who want to kill him for praying to saints? Me and Eli will wait.
No, hang on. I
Give me
think we're.
hold on,
Can
wait.
you point to any crimes in the country where this has happened?
Wick. Give us a demonstration, Wick. I'll wait.
Are you wanting me to demonstrate where a Protestant might want to kill a Catholic over religious differences? I can give you the history of Europe.
No,
give us Reformation.
Right, give us a demonstration right now.
Okay.
Are we worried about slavery rearing its head again because of
the 30 Years' War in Central Europe? Okay, the Wars of Capel, the French Wars of Religion. Again, millions have died.
Let me see if I can let me see if I can clear part of this roadblock
Wick,
here. Right?
Christian ethics ended slavery in Britain. What are you talking about, Wick? This is crazy.
Let me see if I can clear part of this roadblock. Right? I think Wick and I and some critics of Christian nationalism are concerned that at least some of you all, maybe you all will disavow this, right? But at least some of the people I see defending the term on the internet, right, are interested in using the tools of liberal democracy to achieve this kind of cultural dominance you're talking about, then using that overwhelming majority to change some of those institutional things to entrench that permanent view, which takes us back to a more Christendom-like state, which was the state in which we had these wars of conflict. So what we're suggesting is not that, like I've gone to the March for Life. I've sat outside abortion clinics with Catholics, right? I understand that Catholics and Protestants can, because I'm Protestant, by the way, can ally on these social and political issues. And that totally,
Okay.
100%. Yes. Wait, hold on. But what we're suggesting is history suggests that when those political conflicts have been resolved, and once we put down our pitchforks for that political conflict, those thorny theological issues rear their head again. And then we have the question of whose Christianity and which nationality that I raised at the beginning. So I don't know that y'all have resolved this.
I think it's a slippery slope fallacy. I don't think you have any rigid, reason to believe that it's going to do that. And even if it did, so what? If the will of the people is to change some of the structure of democracy and it's voted on through the current democratic system, then who cares? It was the will of the people.
I'm sorry, hang on. So you guys are suggesting, both of you have said at various times, can you give me a modern example of this sort of, killing people over the faith thing? You've mentioned that, but, you're going back to the Reformation, you're going back to the wars of religion. Give us a modern example, right? We live in modernity, which is a beneficiary of liberal democracies, and what you all are suggesting, we're suggesting, seems to undercut the foundations of that liberal democracy that has given us this peace around these religious topics, right?
But
hold on. It's not a slippery slope fallacy to suggest that history teaches that in the absence of these thick protections for the kind of liberties that allow us to exist in a pluralistic society, those things lead to conflict. They just have always, right?
Liberalism, and to piggyback off that just real quick, liberalism was the solution to the wars of Christian nationalist internecine conflicts. Liberalism solved the issue. It asked the fundamental question, even though we have differences, how can we live with each other? How can we live with each other, even though we recognize that there are some reasonable differences and sometimes even unreasonable differences, very differences that are almost insurmountable to get past? Liberalism provides and has provided, as you have said, again, the reason Protestants don't generally, the IRA excluded, right? Like, and all that conflict, right? But generally, that they don't do that anymore is because we live in a liberal society. That's what has solved the problem. When you advocate,
the same folks that said that
to get rid of that liberal society, you are advocating to take away that protection, that shield.
The same folks that say that the border was secure are the same people that are saying that DC is safe. At least Christians are more secure in our belief that we're consistent in this matter. We don't see that anywhere else across the board when it comes to laws, functions, duties.
One at a time.
I don't see any of this. I don't see any cohesiveness across the board on the other end of the aisle. I don't see any of that. As far as Christians, we are in alignment and we're consistent on our front. Even Eli has pointed this out numerous times, but you're still dancing around the subject of cohesiveness. That's the topic here. We're going to bring it back to that.
Just real quick. I mean, I think it is a slippery slope because what you're implying is that if we have what we succeed in and what we are talking about in this debate today in modernity, that it will naturally slip into some kind of archaic theocracy that is going to repeat history, and you have some kind of certainty of this, which you don't. What if I don't want to get away from what we're talking about in modernity today, because that's what you're trying to get us to admit, that our end goal is to have some Trumpian emperor that we're going to crown and we're going to go back into archaic times.
I'm not trying to get you to admit anything. I'm just asking questions, man. I'm just asking questions.
Well, okay, fair enough. That's fair. I'm just wanting to say that that's not where we're having the debate right now. We're talking about the Christian nationalism that we have proposed, number one. Number two, when it comes to Whick's liberalism saved the day and all of the course of history, when you look at the inner cities and the fatherlessness epidemic in the black communities, all of the people that are on welfare with broken families. First of all, do you agree or disagree that strong families are the solution to those problems?
Agree. Hold on. I got a question for you.
Hey, hold on.
How did magical liberalism get us to this conclusion?
I think strong families are a great thing, and we should get into strong families. I agree with you. Fair enough, right? The question I have for you: do you think that people were safer back during the Christian nationalist European days of 1800, or do you think people were safer today in modern America?
I think they were safer whenever Christianity was around 90% between the 50s and 60s.
No, you were wrong. The life expectancy was way down, right? People would be killed all the time over fractious conflicts. Crime is actually, pretty down historically from its high levels. And again, we have never lived in a safer society than we do today.
Wick, you're negating his whole point of families being broken. Matter of fact, when we have the biggest epidemic of single motherhood that's happened, when you look at the outcomes, prisons are filling up. Chicago, look at DC right now. I brought that up, but we skipped over that. By the way, I'll go back to that. And when you look at society,
I just asked a question. Hold on, Martae.
That's not safety to me. That's not ensuring the safety of kids. That's not ensuring the safety of two-parent families and households when we're encouraging guy-on-guy relationships and destroying traditions that we have since the dawn of time. I mean, I'm telling you right now that you guys are destabilizing this, which is the lack of cohesion. We had state religions. That's been broken down by what? Liberalism, liberal ethicists. This is crazy.
Let me bring up some stats real quick.
Just real quick, Martae. I asked a question directly to address the DC crime issue. I'm asking you, if you were to choose whether you wanted to live in 17th century Germany or you wanted to live in DC, where do you think you would be safer? Where do you think you'd be less likely to be accosted? Where do you think we'd have a higher life expectancy? Which one?
Yeah, obviously we're safer in modernity than the Middle Ages, but you're the one accusing us of taking us back to the Middle Ages, and you can't demonstrate that. Now I want to bring up some stats to you. In 1958, when people were asked the question, can you trust can most people be trusted? What do you think percentage of people said yes, most people can be trusted? In 1950, it was 55%. And guess what the amount of Christians were? 92%. In 2025, actually it was 2018. How many people do you think answered the affirmative to can most people be trusted? 34%. And the amount of Christians down to about 65%. So I know that correlation doesn't always equal causation, but we have clues and we have suggestions to causation that as the Christian ethic goes down, distrust of each other also goes down.
Okay, I have a few things.
Your argument on trust levels in polls?
Well, I think
it's a logical element of cohesion breaking down. Wick, can you answer that?
If you want to hang your argument on that evidence,
I'm not hanging the whole argument on that, but I think it's an interesting piece of evidence
when
for sure.
Compare our arguments and you compare the strength of our the evidence that we have presented, I'm just confident of how this is going. But Ukerist, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say first to Eli, slippery slopes are only fallacious if the slope is not actually slippery. But I'm not even making an argument about inevitability. What we're talking about are probabilistic outcomes in the future for policies that we're pushing for now. And so we're all dealing with future possibilities, and so we're dealing in the realm of probability. So I'm not even making an argument of inevitability here. I'm saying we can take historical data and bring it into now and suggest that if we strip down some of the constitutional heritage that, by the way, I think is an inheritance that we obtain from Christendom, that has restricted the power of the magistrate, that has protected some things that we care about, then we increase the likelihood of some of these conflicts recurring. Second, hold on. When you guys bring up examples of establishmentarianism as a positive example, like the states in from colonization past the ratification of the Constitution. You guys are the ones introducing the issue of which church gets public support and what are the consequences of that. Let me give you one example, right? If you went back to the colonization period, to the briefly after ratification period, where states sometimes had requirements that you be a Christian to hold public office, that did happen in colonial America. I agree. I concede 100%. I'm not denying history. The question is, which people count as Christians? And that leads to some of these thorny theological conflicts we're dealing with. Do you have to be a member of an apostolic church? Do you have to be a member of what Protestants might call a confessional church? Can you be a Quaker? Right. All of these things are relevant.
In order
right?
to
so
do
when you,
what?
Hold on. When you guys are introducing that as a policy and a possibility and a thing you're praising, you've brought that up. Finally, Martae keeps bringing up fully irrelevant things that I think both of us are kind of willing to concede. Man, it sucks that there's crap on the streets in San Francisco, and I don't want to pull out the San Francisco poop tracker. Neither of us are defending that. So you keep bringing up stuff that's fully irrelevant to the arguments we're making against your positive
Not irrelevant.
And you're impugning secularism to us.
No. Lack of cohesion. That's crazy.
Well,
neither of us are saying that there's cohesion right now.
When I'm bringing that up, I'm bringing up examples and demonstrations of what's happening as a result of lack of cohesion on your end. We're not seeing this. So whenever you have a Protestant and an Eastern Orthodox disagree, I don't care. When you have a Protestant and the Eastern Orthodox disagree, they both believe on the tenets of Christendom. When you think about this, even when they're disagreeing, they're underneath the same umbrella. When we talk about this, they're not killing each other. But if you look at liberalism, they're killing each other, and then they're sending each other to prison, and they're doing all this. There's actually more of a divide on that side when you take away Christian ethics more than anything else. All of this is backed by force, because if I'm going to ask you a question right now, Ukerist. So if you have marriage and we say gays can't get married underneath our religion in the state, who would get hurt from this?
Do you want me to answer questions about particular policy issues, or are you talking about the broader ideology? Because I can tell you why I think Obergefell was a bad decision. I can tell you what, I agree with you guys on a bunch of policy. That's why this debate is kind of weird, actually. I didn't mention this in my opening for time, but I agree with a lot of policies that Christians support. But again, this is not Christian nationalism by necessity. The definition you guys have given me is one, so overbroad that it's useless. But we had words for this before you guys started being Christian nationalists on the internet and trying to defend this weird ideology, right? We had words for Christian conservatism and the moral majority. We can form political coalitions to fight against abortion. That's all liberal democracy with moral Christian coalitions.
Liberalism, baby.
Okay.
Our definition is an absolute, Ukerist.
First of all, I don't think that it's... go ahead, Martae.
I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Eli. I was just asking if you know definitions are an absolute.
I'm not saying they're an absolute. I'm just saying there are connotations to this term or concept, Christian nationalism, and the definition you've given me is completely unhelpful. So there's a whole cultural conversation happening around this right now. Again, I think I've been very careful. I'm not saying you guys believe what everybody else who's defending on the internet believes. I'm just saying, one, you guys, well, by the way, we haven't even talked about nationalism. What's a nation? How do I know when I found one? How do I know when it's Christian or not? But that aside, there's a whole cultural movement right now. You guys are choosing to latch onto this term rather than just saying, well, I want Christian values and policy, right? That's a thing that people have been doing for freaking ever. Okay, some of the oldest policy lobbying organizations in DC are pro-life organizations who've been like, we are fundamentally Christians. We think this is bad and wrong, and we're going to fight against it with all of our dollars and all of our every fiber of our being. We're going to open crisis pregnancy centers. I don't think that's Christian nationalism. That's my point.
Sure. Well, it's not Christian nationalism because these things are being fought against a dominance in social and political life that is antithetical to Christian ethics, which is why we are positing that we should have the dominance. That is what I think is the key word when it comes to the Christian nationalist debate, is that it's so dominant that anybody associates America with a Christian ethic. Whenever they say, hey, do we want to take a trip to America? And it's a bunch of new age, atheist, fedora tipping losers. They go, no, we probably shouldn't go there. It's overwhelmingly run and socially and culturally functions under a Christian paradigm. We probably wouldn't have a lot of fun there. That would mean to me that we have succeeded in Christian nationalism and that the paradigm is lifted. Of course, people have enacted Christian policies. We're not saying that, well, we don't get to have Christian policies, so until we do, we have Christian nationalism. It's an overwhelming dominance that we are purporting here. And that's step one to what you were
acknowledge that can exist in a liberal structure, that you can
I'm saying exactly. Christian nationalism can be applied to any structure.
No, Christian nationalism and liberalism are at odds. I would posit to you.
Okay, in what way?
The reason is you would have to enforce that dominance in a way that would be illiberal.
Oh, okay. So now we're about to get to the cooming. So what part of the enforcement would you find is illiberal?
What point do you think I am referring to coming?
We're going to get there. We're going to get there soon. I promise. It's going to come up in
You're
the
not
debate.
going to make me come. Stop trying. Stick to grinder, sir.
Why are you being so gay, Wick?
Okay.
Yeah,
He's the one that's talking about making me come.
His thoughts,
I
not
mean, you
mine.
guys, if you guys keep up the gay chatter, I'm gonna be throwing the fireman. I'm gonna be throwing the fireman.
Isn't it ironic?
Earlier than normal.
We want to keep everything straight here. I mean, as far as our end, they can be as gay as you want.
But that's cool. But anyway, regardless,
you see how benevolent we are. We're going to allow you to be gay on your side, but we're not going to tell you what to do. But we hold our standard and we're consistent on our end, and we want to have a superiority that's better and more optimal that everybody can recognize. Even if we have infighting, it's still consistent, a standard that's more optimal. And what would be wrong with this, Wick? Can you tell me anything that would be wrong with this? Whereas your side is clearly kind of gay, but on our side, it's like we're consistent.
Figure out how we would enforce this.
Okay, so how would we enforce any law?
The Christian dominance culturally.
Again, as I said in my opening, we do this through grassroots efforts like these debates, like conversion, all of this. There's a movement coming up, propaganda, NGOs, Christian NGOs that would come in and do the same thing that the liberal NGOs do. It's coming into churches and saying, hey, you know, you guys probably need some training.
Okay, hold on.
Once we've got it. Let's follow that
system. We're using the system.
Let me ask the question so you understand what I'm asking. Okay, so you've done all that. You've convinced a bunch of people that Christianity is a way. Culturally, you are now ascendant and you are dominant in the cultural. How would you continue and ensure to have dominance in the future, right? So that if the winds change, as they often do, especially in Christian nations that become more liberal over time, because like it or not, Christianity is pretty universalist and pluralist in its concepts, okay? So that tends to be the natural trend for a Christian nation. So how would you enforce, right, that they do not slip back into a more secular mode? What enforcement mechanisms, what laws would you put in place to enforce that?
So basically, just to make sure I understand what you're asking, you're saying that we get this dominance and then we have these laws. Is there any form of enforcement that we would make it where these laws cannot be undone, or because I think
or sort of perpetuate the consensus that already exists? Like, are you going to try to sort of, I mean, compulsion you've already denied, but like, what ways are you going to try to make sure that the consensus sticks around, other than, I guess, like deep personal piety or something like that? And and then what would you do to make sure those laws don't get changed in the future?
First of all, I don't want my whole argument to hang on this, as you said before, but I think deep personal piety is something that we would strive for within a Christian ethic. I think that is one of many answers. I also think that, like, when we're looking at things like, and this goes into something I wanted to bring up with what you guys are saying about this regress into archaic states of Christianity in the past. So under democracy in this country, we were the ones who had slavery, right? And it was the same system of which we have today. However, we don't really see it as a risk of going back to that, because there was a moral, I'm not going to call it an evolution, but ascent up into, we don't do this anymore. And we all kind of, I think everybody on this panel, just about anybody you would come to walk on the street, says, you know what? Yeah, we don't need to go back to slavery and owning people for plantations. So in the same right, if we're not looking at like a 50-year plan, a 20-year plan, we're looking at a 300-year plan of changing the actual mental zeitgeist of the nation to go, you know what? Can you believe that our great-great-great-granddad had to watch gay dudes, with strap-ons in the middle of San Francisco? That's insane. I can't believe we did that. The same way that we look at the history books today and go, oh my gosh, can you believe that great-great-great-granddad might have owned a slave? And your grandkids are going to be disappointed in you. Just
wait, hold on. Eli brings up a good point. Preservation of cultural heritage, Christian nationalism also protects nations' historical and cultural legacy, which is often rooted in Christianity, particularly in Western nation. Can you tell me how this doesn't do this? Going back to cohesion, by preserving traditions, art, literature, and institutions, this is tied to Christian heritage. It maintains continuity in pride, collective identity, cultural continuity. Like, I don't see any difference of this. As a matter of fact, we have a stronger argument for cohesion than you do. I've yet to hear anything less than this. I still wait. Just like Eli.
By the way, real quick, I just also want to say, how often do you think that the very Christian abolitionists of slavery heard in the opposition, oh, you want to do away with slavery? Next thing you know, you're going to do away with democracy. Same exact kind of slippery slope argument.
You think that's the same? That's your argument?
I mean, it's pretty much what you're saying. You're saying, well, if we abide by a Christian ethic that has a prescription to all of our problems, well, you just want to go back to the ancient times.
Okay.
Go ahead, Wick.
So, from one of my chatters, but I think it is pertinent to the discussion. Says these guys, referring to you, are no different than Islamic fundamentalists that want to bring Sharia law into a country whose laws tolerate the beliefs, then want to change the country to close the door behind them. And I think that's my fear when it comes to Christian nationalism. And when you talk about enforcement, when you talk about enforcing the cultural zeitgeist and things like that, that does bring to mind, it's reminiscent of Islamic fundamentalism, Sharia law. You are closer to Islamists than you are to Christians, sir.
Can you show me where Christians are stoning people?
Let me go there. That's hilarious.
Stoning people.
No.
Where's Christian Sharia law?
Christians actually stone people? Are you asking me this question?
Where is this happening at? Can you show me the state or nation where this is happening at?
Hold on, I just want to be clear what you asked me. Did you just ask me when Christians stoned people?
No, I'm asking you where in the world today are Christians stoning people? I'll wait. Matter of fact, since we're allowing all this immigration to happen to come into our nation, would you rather Islamists rule or Christians rule?
I would rather liberalism.
Pretty obvious damn question.
In the countries that are liberal, in the countries where liberalism rules, there are no stonings.
That doesn't even answer the question, Wick.
Does not rule, however, there are.
I've got two questions for Wick. So the first one is, in the past 10 years, what major event in New York City did we see a Islamic jihadist as the main speaker, where there was women in hijabs on the front poster, and thousands of people within the crowd, American citizens, were wrapping each other in American flag hijabs, including the men?
I don't know what you're referring to.
It was the Women's March, where they actually had their poster was a woman in a hijab with the whole Maybelline counter on her face, which I think is haram. It's totally contradictory. Linda Sarsour is the main speaker, who is a jihadist, and everybody in the crowd was putting on American flag hijabs, including a video scene of men going down, which is totally antithetical to Islam, but their prime speakers were prominent jihadists and proprietors of taqiyya.
Can I ask you what point you think you were making with that?
If you're so afraid of Islam taking over and you think that we're just like Muslims, I would actually check your own party for the ones that have the most Muslim sympathy.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't like Islamism. I am
I don't either.
An enemy.
I like it less than you.
Okay, but second of all, well, what you're trying to do is emulate their behaviors.
No, so here's the second question. So I had a second one.
Okay.
And also, by the way, if Wick gets to phone a friend, I'm going to call my priest and put him on the speakerphone in a second. I'm just kidding. But he had to phone a friend in order to argue with us. I just want to point that out. That's kind of funny.
I'm a capitalist. If they pay me to say something, I will.
Okay, can wait till after the debate.
Fair. I'm all for capitalism.
I guess you can be bought, Wick. We can't, because we have martyrs that can't be bought. We'll actually die for a cause. That's pretty cohesive.
Do you know what an indulgence was?
Wait. So can you show me where community engagement,
Martae,
can you show me where cohesiveness, I've yet to hear any cohesiveness on your end. We have community engagement. We have Christian churches that serve the community in hubs for fostering, volunteering, and mutual support. Can you show me an example where there's any cohesiveness that you've offered from your spectrum? If we do a comparison, we have
liberalism, baby. You swim in our water.
We have both admitted that if you make more Christians, those Christians together will be more cohesive. And as a Christian, I would like there to be more Christians. We just call that evangelism, right? So that again, we're not just defending spreading Christianity and asking Christian. Like, I believe, faith for all of life is a nice Protestant phrase we throw around, right? So like, these are things that I fundamentally agree with, and I'm saying are different from Christian nationalism. So, like, Martae brings up cultural heritage and tradition, and one of the things that I think like sticks in my head about this is, in America, right, we can do that. We can preserve our cultural heritage and tradition through civic education. Well, I can teach students about the founding generation, about the founding documents. I don't think that's Christian nationalism. It does require challenging some current prevailing cultural narratives that you guys also challenge about, the founding fathers were all deists and blah, blah, blah. So 100%, that's awesome. But I can preserve that tradition in a way that I would not say is distinctively Christian nationalist. I can do it through an American civic education project. My question to Eli, and back to the freaking slippery slope thing again, the question that I was trying to hone in on from the beginning is, do we want to pin our policy to the currently existing state of public moral consensus? Or is your goal to eventually create such a strong moral consensus that it will then create a for all time pin that will hold us down from then on? Because if it's the latter, I think that's what people are concerned with, because that sounds like you're trying to introduce illiberalism within the system of liberalism. That's where people are having this issue, right? It's not just, well, I want more people to agree with me, vote for the policies, and have a cultural dominance, and then, hey, that can change like it did in a lot of Christian nations over time. You want to have a flagpole planted that can never change. That's what people are concerned with.
That's literally what I answered, is in the same way that we're not going back on slavery anytime soon. I think it would be ridiculous to imply that we are. That's what we're trying to do.
So you do want to bring out about a political institution or order that is illiberal or post-liberal or something, right?
Why would you, as a Christian, if we were to have the dominance, let me ask you this question. Why would you, as a Christian, if we were to establish the dominance of a Christian ethic, why would you not want that to be something rigid that could be taken back on?
Because then you introduce the coercion problem and the conversion at the point of the sword problem.
Wick, I think you brought on a partner that basically agrees with us, so he just disagrees on what to call it.
I don't agree with that.
Martae would never agree with that, by the way. He wants to think I'm a coomer for some reason. I don't know why.
Ukerist, I'm just telling you right now that I don't agree with your lack of cohesiveness with your Timu mustaches, because ours are cohesive. We line up at least. Countries like
you guys are like a power.
I let you talk. I didn't even interrupt you. Countries like
important point. They're like a palette swap. They look
countries in like colors. Italy and Spain maintain strong national identities by embracing the Christian architectural and artistic heritage, which attracts tourism, fosters pride. In contrast, nations de-emphasize their heritage by taking away Christian nationalism or Christian ethics by risking losing distinctiveness, as we see in some secularizing European states with declining cultural confidence. Can you show me a better example of lack of cohesiveness?
Martae, I have a question. Are you reading from ChatGPT or from Quora?
Not reading from ChatGPT or
You're reading from something. All right.
Yeah, we're allowed to. We can put notes down at any point, right?
Look, I'm not against cultural cohesiveness. I'm not against cultural cohesiveness.
We're
arguing about whether
Pardon me, gentlemen. I think Wick wanted to squeeze something in here. Wick.
No, it's just it's like, look. They're a palette swap. Let's be clear. Eli and Martae, they're the same person. Look at them. Look at them. They're the same.
That's a compliment.
They have the same hairstyle. They have the same
cohesive.
They're just a palette swap. They're just
hold on.
colors.
If he took his shirt off and I did, he's gonna mog me so hard. We are not the same person.
He is right about that. I would mog all you guys, but go ahead. Right. No homo.
No, that's that. I mean, like, yes, if we were having a debate about who's the better bodybuilder, Martae wins. But we're not having a debate about who's the better bodybuilder. We're having a debate about, again, does Christian nationalism increase cultural and moral cohesion? And I've yet to hear a convincing argument that says it does. And we have plenty of examples throughout history where, again, this just doesn't seem to be the case. And in many cases, the only reason we have the cohesions that we do today, right, which I would argue is far more cohesive in a lot of ways than we're back during the internecine European Reformation wars, is because of liberalism.
Okay, but didn't your partner just say that you guys both agree that we lack cohesion today, especially compared
to spectrum? Hold on.
Kind of backs up in there a little bit.
That we are not entirely cohesive today, but we can also say that we are more cohesive today than we were 300 years ago.
And the question is cohesion over what and for the sake of what and at the expense of what, right? I'm sure that you would both agree there are ways we could achieve cohesion, even on things you like, that would be bad, right? Like point of the sword kind of conversion, right? If I could just force convert an entire nation to Eastern Orthodoxy, I know you guys didn't do that as much as the Catholics did, but imagine I could force convert an entire nation at the point of the sword to Eastern Orthodoxy. I could achieve consensus, right? And if I had a good enough military, I could maintain that consensus, but that's probably bad, right?
Yeah, then that would be against the Christian ethic. So that would be
So yeah, consensus on what, for the sake of what, and at the expense of what? These are the questions we're asking.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, we agree there's a certain amount of, when you have pluralism, you have disagreement, but you might have consensus over certain shared principles or values or history or heritage. All of those things can be sites of cohesion, even in a pluralistic nation.
Ask me those questions again. I can answer them all directly and easily.
Over
what? Do it one more time. Give me the rundown.
Yeah. So cohesion. Over what principles?
Christian
for the
ethics.
sake of what? What's the goal? What's the end? And then at the
Christian
expense of
ethics?
what? What are we sacrificing to achieve cohesion?
Okay, so for the sake of Christian ethics, and what was it? Sorry, I'm
Define Christian ethics. Stop it. Stop just saying Christian ethics. What do you mean?
I'm sorry that you didn't prepare for the debate, but Christian ethics would be those laid out within the Nicene Creed, within the Christian dogmas of the church, the most generalized and agreed upon principles of the Sermon on the Mount, love thy neighbor as thyself, everything that is pushed Christianity throughout history into modernity.
I'm glad you defined that, but it's just kind of weird for you guys to do this thing where you're just like, you didn't prepare for the debate because we're asking for definitions. That's happened twice now, three times now. Very strange. I don't like that. Like, that's like we're asking you to define your terms, and you're being like, well, you didn't prepare. Like, I'm asking what you think. Right?
That's fair. That's fair. That was probably a low blow. I'm sorry, Wick. Forgive
You don't
me.
have to apologize. It's fine.
Oh, thank God. Okay. Anyway,
you will have to apologize for your poor debate performance to your daddy later. I understand that, but right when you say these things like, "Oh, it's clearly laid out in the Nicene Creed," again, people, Christians who have followed the Nicene Creed, have been killing each other for hundreds of years over what these things mean. Look at I'll give you one example of something where Christians today just cannot agree on: immigration.
Okay, you think that that's like a 50-50 split amongst Christians? Really?
Probably.
No.
Okay, prove it.
Okay, well, I mean, we can look it up. I don't think that that's prudent for the debate right now, but I would almost personally guarantee. You want me to look it up? We can look it up. Fuck it. Let's.
But I'm telling you, based on the teachings of Christ, right, and based on the different stances that I know of several denominations, there is a big split within the Christian community over immigration. Right? Should people be stopped from coming to the promised land? Should people? Should borders even exist, right? This idea that nations even should be recognized is something that a lot of Christians simply do not agree on. Look at Jehovah's Witnesses. They won't salute the flag. They aren't allowed to vote. All these things, right? Look at again, there's just so many different denominations. So when you say, Christians just agree on everything, it just shows profound ignorance on Christianity.
No, it's not ignorant. Christian teachings like the 10 Commandments or the Golden Rule offer universal standards that transcend individual preferences, Wick. For example, prohibitions against murder, theft. We can all agree on this. The deceit creates a baseline for trust in cooperation in society. I'm just telling you right now, at least we have a consistent standard that's grounded in moral truth and faith. You don't have any of this. Therefore, you can't have consistency when everything's so super subjective. And hold on, Ukerist, you said my terms were broad. Yours are even way more broad. Matter of fact, it's so broad that you haven't even given a moral consistency yet on your side, or even given anything optimal as to what we can adhere to. Because if we remove it, what do you replace this with? Ukerist, what?
He says, hang on, Ukerist, and I'm muted. It's your partner interrupting you, okay? Hang on, Ukerist, I'm muted, dude.
Oh, sorry. Well, I wanted to throw this out there just for him saying that Christians are divided
62% of Christianity supports immigration. Thank you.
No, what the stat that I got says that 79% of Protestants and 70% of Catholics view mass illegal immigration as a major problem. So that's Pew
put
research.
my source in chat.
Okay. Well, I could do the same thing.
No, you heard it from your uncle, Wick. Your source in chat.
My uncle.
Family went to you.
Hey, I have an uncle who works for Pew Research. Okay, that's insulting. I'm sorry.
Hold on. What do you think you're trying to do with like insulting my chat? My chat's based. We are Wickers here, okay? We love each other. We are culturally cohesive, okay? And when we look, I would posit
Yeah,
my
Wick's still
chat is
inflamed
far
really
more
quick. So
culturally
does Tinder.
cohesive
This
than Christianity as a whole.
Wick, is this specifically like legal immigration, or does this have to do with
I didn't ask about illegal or legal immigration. I asked about immigration in general.
Oh, wow. So my stat says that 70% of Catholics and 79% of Protestants agree that illegal immigration is a major problem. So I think that whole giant split in Christianity thing just got debunked, Mr. Wick.
Hold on. Do you think I think that illegal immigration is a major problem?
That's not what I said. You're the one who said that Christians disagree on it. And I
On
just showed you
immigration,
that
you
they
said
don't.
immigration specifically.
That's way more cohesive than that, Wick.
Hold on. You're just okay.
Yeah,
I
and it
realized.
points to
Yeah, go ahead. Put put your thoughts together, Wick. I'm still
Okay,
waiting.
I'm not. You guys are just dumb. Let's be real.
Still waiting.
Can I tell you something about survey effects? Okay, so like
Nothing
like
yet,
treatment,
Wick. Still waiting.
treatment effects
It
on
says
these
the guy
surveys.
decided Cain and Abel as a lack of Christian cohesion.
No, I'm sorry.
You're calling us dumb.
Treatment. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I think most
if you ask
Americans
Christians how
hold
to deal
on.
with immigration, you're going to have a wide variety of answers.
Okay. And
so here's another source that shows that and this is from the 2025 Evangelical Views on Immigration Study, 55% view or support, I should say, immigration even if it's illegal.
Evangelicals doesn't sound orthodox, not Christian. Debunked.
Well,
what about divorce? Is no fault divorce something that Christians agree or disagree on?
I think that it's something that there would be either a 50-50 split or a majority of Christians would be against no-fault divorce.
Okay. It's a 50-50 split.
It could be, or I think that if it wasn't,
you think that's culturally
50-50,
cohesive?
Yeah, because I think it promotes strong families, which you said that you
Wait,
agree with.
You just mentioned that there's a 50-50 split in the Christian community between no-fault divorce. And
Oh,
I asked
sorry,
you if that's culturally cohesive.
I thought you
and
meant
said,
forgive me. I thought you meant is no-fault divorce.
No,
make
I'm
cultural
just
cohesion.
pointing out the divisiveness that exists within Christian communities over different policy issues.
I know, but so just because you can point out places where we disagree doesn't disprove the fact that we agree on more than we disagree with, which is where the cohesion.
You have yet to demonstrate this.
Okay. Yes. Again, because you interrupted when I started giving my list of things we agree on. That is the Trinitarian God, pro-life stances, anti-LGBTQ marriage stances, strong families. That would include, I think, anybody that could reason into it that we should have no-fault divorce and we should incentivize people to not ruin families with divorce, like what boomers brought into the country with their, liberalism and pursuit of happiness and long-haired hippie parties. I think that all of these things point to greater cohesion. We have, like I said in my opening, the blueprint for strong families. We have had this historically, and if you personally agree that strong families are remedies to many of the issues in the country, then I don't see where you can say, well, we should also apply to the liberal ethic of having polyamorous homosexual marriages, no-fault divorce. Okay, so
does supporting political liberalism mean I have to support those things?
Well, I think that it supports. I think here's what we're pointing at is by saying that what we're proposing with Christian nationalism in a dominance of people who hold the views that provide these prescriptions, when you're saying, whoa, buddy, you better be pretty careful. If you do that, X, Y, and Z thing might happen. And I'm trying to get from your side, what are you so afraid that's going to happen other than these things that I just mentioned being removed from the equation and us actually having that cohesion that we're talking about? So how about you guys tell us, like Wick, I wanted to get back to what your phone a friend guy said. He said that, like Muslim countries who come in and introduce Sharia, they go in through the open door, which is democracy, and then they shut it on the way back.
Yep.
Okay. My question to you is, if Christians, let's say that we do that. Let's say that we enter in through liberal democracy, and then like you guys saying is your big fear is that we shut the door on the way back and we change the structure of the system. So what? What is the bad thing that and that you can justify will happen when Christians have that abundance of power?
So are you asking me, just to be clear, why it would be a bad thing to get rid of liberal democracy?
So let's just say for
what you're
Christians as a majority to have the ability to shut the door and make changes to democracy. Sure. Why would that be bad?
Why would it be bad that a group of people is able to override the will of the people to enforce their
No, but it's the will of the people that do it. It's the majority
it's the will
of
the people at that time.
Yeah, at
and
one
then you want to make
point,
that permanent. Yeah.
But again,
so by your own standards, will the people
because
rules
when
all.
the will of the people changes, it's important that society be able to adjust to that, because this allows people to live.
Everybody will
with
love it because they're the
freedom.
majority.
Do you think that freedom is a Christian principle, sir?
Yeah, it can be, but I think so is duty.
Yes, freedom is a
in and of
Christian
itself
principle.
is kind of the kill shot to Christian nationalism from an illiberal bent. If you do go in and you do start bringing illiberalism into a liberal system, I would argue that that is unchristian by its very nature, because it deprives people of their personal freedoms.
Okay, what personal
Should
freedoms
a person
are being
be
deprived
able
of?
to decide freely what they believe, what they espouse, what they say? Should freedom of speech exist?
Yes. Who's talking about taking that away? Relevance?
When this is why I'm asking, right? What laws would you pass? What things would you have? Would you introduce blasphemy laws? Could I, under a Christian national system, denounce the Godhead?
Yeah, let's say that we did. Let's say that we had blasphemy laws where if you blasphemed the Lord, we would put you on a stake and put you to the sword. Why would that be bad in your worldview?
Because I don't think that people should be killed for what they say and they believe. Do you?
No, not necessarily. But why do you personally think that this is bad?
Because I think that in order to have the most human flourishing possible, so people can, so freedom of speech, and if we want to get into this, right? It's a technology. It's a way that societies, cultures, peoples come to truth. Because when you have a statement, when you have a belief, when you have someone that has any kind of thing that you say, there are only three real possibilities, right? It's called Mill's Trident. I don't know if you're familiar with it, right? But basically, one of these three things happens. Either you're entirely 100% correct, okay? Not very often that this happens, but on occasion, right, will happen. In that case, it is important to have the ability for people to challenge what you say, because you're able to prove the truth of what you say through conflict in that way.
Yeah.
The second possibility, far more likely, is that there's some truth to what you say and there's some falsehood to what you say. In that case, it's important for people to be able to challenge that, because then you can sift the truth from the falsehoods. And in the third conditions, what you say is just entirely false. I think that's self-evident why it would be good for people to be able to challenge that. So the reason I'm bringing this up, right, is because we as a culture, as a people, we have a very hard time, right, discerning, again, coming to the truth immediately. We go through a process to arrive eventually at truth. Let us reason together, right? The Lord says to prophets of old, right? You and I, as a man to man, right? Okay,
so
he reasoned with Abraham when it came to
you're kind of
Gomorrah,
pontificating
right?
and gift scalping, bro.
With prophets all the time.
Wait.
Let him finish, and then we can pick it right back.
You gonna finish it at some point?
When you ask me the question, why is it bad that someone be put to the sword because they believe a certain thing or say a certain thing, right? I am arguing that it retards a society and a culture's ability to find truth and to progress in technology, to progress in culture, and all these things. That is a bad thing.
You talked about a flourishing society, which I don't see on your end. Matter of fact, if I had a magic wand and waved my wand and liberalism turned everybody gay, do you think it would be flourishing society then? And I forced everybody to be gay. Do you think this is, or
no, I don't think forcing sexuality
the antithesis of this, if I forced everybody to be straight, would it be more flourishing underneath our rule, underneath our supremacy? Do you think it would be more flourishing or less flourishing?
I don't think you should force anyone to be gay.
Well,
I don't think you should force anyone to be straight.
Answer the question, Wick, if we did do this, what harm would come about with society? If
when
we
you try to force
everybody to be straight with this magic
wand,
wand,
do you think that you should force Christians to accept a gay marriage and have the marriage within their church?
You don't have to accept it. You can.
Well, what about the laws under secularism that have actually fined and made churches recognize homosexual marriages and also sued them for discrimination, where now all of a sudden it's like, we've never actually forced anyone to be Christian, but there are laws that have forced Christians to do things against their own beliefs. That's what I think is. Oh, it's happened in, there was certain parishes in South Carolina that got, it was one of the Carolinas, forgive me, but they had priests who were refusing to do certain services, and they were threatening them with legal action. I don't know all the details of the story, but I know that in Canada, there were priests that were actually fined by the state for discrimination.
Well, Canada's kind of illiberal in a lot of ways, so yeah.
Wick, you still haven't even answered my question, Wick. If I forced everybody to be straight with this magic wand, what harm would come about in society?
Would be better or worse. I think it
hold on. The other side of this is everybody's gay. Do you think it would be more flourishing or less flourishing?
I think it'd be largely the same. We would die out, unfortunately.
So that's less flourishing. You just got that's crazy. Anyways, go ahead, Eli.
And by the way,
hold on.
Quick.
Do you think it's good or that you can? Because we don't have a magic wand. I would assume you agree that this does not exist. Okay. So do you think that you can force everyone?
Can you answer the hypothetical? Can you engage it with?
In a world where I had a magic wand, okay, and I was going to wave it for something, it would not be to make everyone straight or to make everyone gay. You know what?
If you did,
to make everyone wise.
Would it be better or worse, Wick? More flourishing or less? Your words. You said flourishing. This is flourishing. Can you show me how it's flourishing? Underneath this supremacy.
I guess in a world where I could force everyone and wave a magic wand, I guess you got me. But we don't live in that world.
Can I ask you guys two questions, or one question, two different parts? Do you, either of you, you can answer however you want. Do either of you think that there are any political principles or Christian ethical principles to be derived from Christ's parables, just in general?
I think that they could inform decisions made on a political level. I don't know about a specific policy that would in a one-to-one way say, oh, well, the parable says this, so we need to make this law around this parable. I think it just informs decision making, which is what we're talking about.
Okay, yeah, so I agree. Like, politics is all prudential. Politics is, as many famous people have said, the art of the possible, right? So two parables I want to ask you questions about, just so I can flesh out my understanding of what you think Christian nationalism is. The first one is the parable of the wheat and the tares. It's in, I think, at least two places, but Matthew 13, 24 and on, where Jesus, gives this parable of the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sows good seed, and then somebody, the devil, comes along and sows bad seed, and there's wheats and tares together, and his workers are like, should we tear up the tares? And he says, no, wait until the day of harvest, and then we'll sift them, right? And so multiple early church figures, St. John Chrysostom, St. Augustine, take this as a political principle, right? So I'll just read a little quote, very short, from St. John Chrysostom. He says, what then if the tares should remain to the end? Then I will say to the reapers, gather first the tares and bind them into bundles and burn them. And then he goes on to say, either he means that if you take up arms to kill the heretics, many of the saints also must needs be overthrown with them, or that of the very tares it may be likely that many may change and become wheat, right? So he takes a political principle here of tolerance in modern parlance, right? And then also Augustine takes it the same way, that we tolerate sinners among us in this present age, etc. And then the second parable of the Good Samaritan. I'm curious how you guys parse both of those, the parable of the wheat and tares, parable of the Good Samaritan, in terms of your Christian nationalism. What does the Good Samaritan teach us about how we should treat foreigners and strangers and heretics, technically speaking, the Samaritans were, and how we should treat tares?
Mad that
hold on. Christianity teaches us that we should.
How about you don't interrupt, dude, and let me answer the question, Spurg. So what I think this is all going back to is this idea that you guys think that what we're positing as a dominance in social and political life is going to somehow lead to mass persecutions, which again has not been justified in this debate. So nobody said, no, you can sigh, but you're saying with John Chrysostom. I'm
not
getting
answering his question whatsoever.
What I'm getting at is that if John Chrysostom says that we shouldn't just go after heretics to the sword, and that we, shouldn't just root them all up until the day of judgment, right? It's kind of almost, and I'm hesitant to say this because I don't believe in hippie Jesus, but a live and let live mentality, right? Am I somewhat steelmanning this, Ukerist? So
I wouldn't present it as a hippie mentality, but I also wouldn't present it as a slope. So
but to what my understanding of you bringing up these parables is that there's somewhere in there in the form of this debate is an objection when you say I'm curious to what your side is.
I think Jesus is presenting a prudential principle that says you should especially be wary in attempts to root out sinners from among you in this present age, right? You should at least have some sort of prudential hesitance in your efforts to do that. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Now, do you also think that in the parable of the hidden talents, whenever somebody buries their talents and is being lazy and, not giving back what the master asked of them, I think that in this particular parable, the master can be God and an individual bearing his talents before God, and also through the state, not burying your ability. Like if we have in a democratic system the ability to say, you know what, I think that abortion is murder. I think there's infanticide in this country. I have the ability to save another individual's life by enacting these policies. Would it almost be considered sinful in order to not do so? So again, I can agree with that to one principle, but I don't think that what that's talking about is like, hey, if we get the majority, why don't we just go round up all the heretics and execute them? Which again, I'm not necessarily putting words in your mouth, but I feel like the opposition's argument always comes down to, well, what happens whenever you guys get to that point and there hasn't been any justification that that point is going to happen or will happen? You can cite things in ancient times, but all I could do is say the same thing with democracy in the country we founded on. We had slavery, we had Jim Crow laws hundreds of years later. Well, I guess that means that the entire democratic system has a...
All we have to do is compare it to two. We can acknowledge that both systems have flaws. We can acknowledge that suffering, conflict exists within both systems, but it's just a simple question of which had more and which had less. And I think that the history is pretty clear that the times of holy war across Europe, where millions and millions, again, as a percentage of the population at the time, far more than happens today, were being killed by fellow Christians. I think that is fundamentally worse on every metric that you can name in modernity.
Well, again, this is why. So I got cut off with my last conversation with you, and I wanted to make clear I don't believe that we should take people who blaspheme to the sword. I was making a poking holes in subjective morality and how in your worldview.
Why do you think my morality is subjective?
Well, I would be curious to know what your objective standard is if you want to correct me.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm not prideful enough to know that I have an exact objective standards, but I will say this: if everyone followed Christ and his morality, the world would be a better place, right? And I'll just cede to that. I am not prideful enough to think that I know better. Do I consider myself Christian? Only if you consider like the follower of Christ. Yes. If you think if I have to acknowledge his divinity, I don't know. Right, I'm agnostic, but I don't believe in subjective morality. I believe in objective morality, and I think objectively we can see that liberalism is better objectively than nationalism. Yes.
But are you saying that that objectivity is grounded in a Christian ethic?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So you would, even though you don't have a personal, you haven't gotten to the point of personally believing that Christ is divine yet, or that maybe even if God is real, you kind of defer to these historic underlyings that people are made in the image of God, 10 Commandments. Okay, you think that was a good.
Yep.
And you think, would you also concede? That's awesome, by the way. I just want to say that's great. Would you say that in history, a big portion, not the only reason, but a majority of the reason that we hold views against things like murder and these different laws are rooted in this Christian ethic, not just kind of a general, ancient Greek, well, there should be an eye for an eye restitution.
I don't think,
but in the Christian
I don't
ethic,
know, and I don't think it matters. I'm not a student of history enough on the roots of morality to pretend to know the answer to your question. But I will say, right, that in my objective opinion, that's funny, right? But in my view, liberalism and Christianity are bedfellows in a lot of ways. I think that when I say liberalism, I'm not talking left and right in America, right? I'm talking about the foundational liberal value of how do we live with each other when they are fundamentally going to be conflicts on a scale of what do we believe, right? Do we believe in God? Which God do we believe in? If we believe in the same God, how do we worship him, right? If we believe in the same book, the Bible, how do we interpret these different verses? And I think liberalism is kind of the answer. And if you believe in kind of like this idea that we are a Christian nation, I would argue that the Constitution is kind of God's answer to this, right?
It sounds pretty cohesive from your end, from the Christian worldview.
Okay. It's cohesive because, right, you don't introduce nationalism and illiberalism into it.
Okay.
As soon as you introduce nationalism and illiberalism into the mix, it ceases to be cohesive and becomes a problem. And when you argue for Christian nationalism, as you have, and you argue for enforcement mechanisms and laws to prevent the people from being able to choose for themselves what they want, I would posit to you that that is, firstly, illiberal, and secondly, unchristian.
Exactly.
Liberalism
okay.
actually destroys Christian ethics. What are you talking about? So when we're too liberal with our policies or Christian ethics or ethos, we allow rainbows, flags in the churches where they weren't before. And it's like
God is strong.
Everything that you posited right now, the historical evidence, even though you say you don't talk about this, I'm going to refer to my notes. Nations like the early United States or post-war II Poland leaned on Christian ethics to unify diverse populations. The U.S. Constitution and legal traditions, while not explicitly religious, were shaped by Christian moral assumptions. This is, to your point, contributing to a stable civic culture. Similarity, Poland's Catholic identity helped it resist Soviet ideological erosion, maintaining national solidarity. How is this supremacy bad, Wick? How is this bad? It's consistent and good. You even agree with this.
Again,
by your own metrics.
Hold on. You are not arguing just for more people to be Christian. That's not what you're arguing.
I'm arguing for cohesive consistency.
That enforces, again, reinforces, I believe the words you guys use are Christian cultural dominance. And that is what I object to.
Okay.
How would this dominance be bad? You've never answered this question. We're still waiting. You brought up Muslim, Sharia law, all this other stuff, everything but the Christian ethos. We're still waiting for the Christian example of this.
And I'll ask you
in
again,
modern day 2025.
Do you think that you can come to a good result, but through means that you would not want to do? So say I could, at the point of the sword or with a gun, force every single person to bend the knee and confess that Jesus is the Lord, right? Do you think that that would be a good thing to do? Or do you acknowledge that this would be a tyrannical overstepping that would be remarkably unchristian? Do you acknowledge this?
Yeah.
Okay, so if your argument is we just want to convince a bunch of people to be more Christian and then that's the way we get dominance, we don't have a disagreement. But then if that's the case, welcome my liberal brothers. Okay. Welcome to liberalism.
Now, this is the point I want to drive home for you. So everything that you've brought up about how important it is for people to have their freedom of expression, how important this liberalism is to our democracy, that we have the freedoms and ability to do this. You do realize that this was an overwhelmingly largely due to a Christian ethic that had a value in free will, right? It was a Christian ethic that said, yes, you know what, we should put into the Constitution freedom of speech, freedom of religion, because that honors, because that, like you said, they're bedfellows, right? So if we follow the Christian ethic, right? Okay, so by your own argument, if we follow the Christian, we're advocating for the democratic system. Absolutely.
No, hold on.
So you just made the argument for us.
Hold on, no. This is a trick, right? You're not being honest. Right?
No.
Because what you're advocating for is to use the democratic principles to get into power. And then as Martae has said, and you have hinted at, then you will use that system and then start shutting the doors behind you and introduce
your whole argument is asserting that that's what we're going to do. I've said the whole debate you have no justification that's going to happen. I've said the whole debate you have no justification that's going to happen.
That's what's going to happen. Your debate partner said he was going to do it.
If we shut the doors on everything that's antithetical to Christian ethics, how would that be bad? We've asked this question like 5 different times in this whole debate.
How can you say it's going to be done?
Answer this.
Partner
You're
saying you're going to do it.
gentlemen,
but you have yet to answer this yourself.
if you're going to act like kindergarteners, I will begin to treat you like one. Tone it down and be respectful.
So, Wick, the problem is when you say
just real quick, can we just demonstrate what happened there? Like we're on the one hand, right, from one side of their mouth, Eli Nix, is that your name? Yeah, sorry.
That's right.
Eli Nix is like, oh well, we never said we were gonna do that. And then Martae, in the very next breath, interrupts him to say, yeah, we're gonna do it, and why would it be bad?
Well,
do you see the issue?
No, here's the problem.
No, we're talking about the freedom, right? We're allowing you to have this freedom. What he's talking about when you're saying we're not going to force, right? We're not going to make you do this. He's talking about forcing you, like basically putting hands on you and making you do this. What I'm talking about is allowance. Two things can be true at the same time. Wick, you're just mincing words and trying to confuse things.
Yes, and Wick, the problem here is your assumption when we say close the doors and like changing democracy, you instantly apply that means no more freedom of speech, no more freedom of expression, no more freedom of belief. And those things are all part of your presupposition and assertion to what you think these manic, evil fundamentalists will do. But it's just an assertion. You have no justification to believe that that's what we mean or that's the case. And I can't look 100 years in the future and say what a Christian populist would do. But I know if they're following a strict Christian ethic, that the whole reason we have freedom of speech and the whole reason we have liberal freedom of expression is because we had people who valued divine free will in order to give that to you. So your whole thing is self-defeating, and all you're doing is just putting assumptions into our end that somehow we're going to turn tyrannical, which you haven't justified.
We've seen tyranny from your end. Actually, Jordan Peterson fought this in Canada when they were enforcing language for me to not address you a certain way. Now all of a sudden it's tyrannical. Can you point to point to a modern example of Christianity where we're controlling language? We're more benevolent than you are on the left side. So this is crazy.
But they would be the first ones to tell Christians how to worship.
You guys, do you think this is a Canadian flag, sir?
We're talking about a nation. That's any nation, especially in the West.
America,
this is happening in Colorado right now. We can give you current examples of where language is controlled. This is happening right now. Matter of fact, it's gaining traction. Grassroots operations happening right now where language is being controlled. Right now, we can point to Colorado. We can point to LA, actually. We can point to certain other places. This is infiltrating Christian culture and actually breaking apart cohesion and making it worse. When you put in more Christian ethics, there's more cohesion. When you have more liberalism, there's less cohesion.
And the reason Wick only wants to talk about America is because it's the most Christian. When we talk about countries like Canada and the UK, especially the UK, where cops show up to your house because of your Twitter posts, I don't want to see America turn into that place.
Hang on, the UK has an established church, okay? Hold on a second.
Liberals are using so much force, way more than Christians ever do. We're so benevolent.
Y'all keep bringing up this, like, again, you keep bringing it back to the slippery slope thing. Eli just said, we've asked you to demonstrate that this thing will happen. Well, what we're suggesting is, you all have acknowledged that way back in the past, there were fights where Catholics were killing Orthodox and Orthodox were killing Catholics, and you all were both killing Protestants and Protestants were killing both of you, et cetera, et cetera. And we are suggesting, well, what stopped that from happening historically?
Okay.
Hold on. I've shut up for a long time. I'm not interrupting you losers. I'm gonna finish my damn point. Okay. So what stopped that from happening? We're suggesting it was a constitutionalist framework. Yes, this is the one time tonight I'll agree with Martae. Yes, you're right. This constitutionalist framework emerges from a Christian framework. I agree. This is an inheritance of Christendom. It's something that emerges, by the way, in England, established church still, right? We see the limitation of the power of the sovereign, a limitation of the power of the civil magistrate. We keep pressing you guys on what you guys think in your ideal world, once you've achieved this cultural dominance, what is going to be the relationship between church and state? What is going to be the principle of toleration, if there is one? What are the duties and responsibilities of the civil magistrate? And you guys keep hemming and hawing like we're suggesting you're just going to slaughter all of us. No, it doesn't have to be that. No, hold on. It doesn't have to be that you'll slaughter all of us. It might be that we go into your ideal Christian nationalist paradise and you ban a Reformation Heritage Publishing Company that lets me publish my Puritan works, right? You say, I can't publish that damn heresy anymore, right? That's the kind of thing we're concerned about, right? So you're asking us to demonstrate it will happen. Again, I told you before, I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not making a slippery slope argument. I'm saying this is probabilistic inference from the way things used to be before we had that constitutionalist framework that you guys have not disavowed wanting to dismantle. So
right, because it's part of the Christian ethic. So this is the whole problem with this is why it's game over for you guys, because you keep citing this ethical framework that was inherently part of Christian values.
But you seem to think any Christian political theology is Christian nationalism. I'm saying you guys are wrong about that.
Well,
and you haven't proved to me that I'm wrong.
Well,
you guys are making a positive case. Come on.
Well, I know. And what I'm saying is that everything you're saying that you're afraid is going to go out the window is we're saying is precisely part of the Christian ethic that was established in a country that is actually on its way out the window now because
I think
of
some of your compatriots
rhetoric.
I think some of your compatriots would suggest, as I've seen some super chats come through, that it is actually part of a reformational liberal Protestant ethic, and that we should roll back some of those protections, right? So again, I'm not imputing their views to you all, but you have to understand the connotations of defending this sort of thing mean that you're taking on some baggage that you have to clear. And when we ask you to clarify, and you hem and haw and say, you're just doing a slippery slope, man, and you don't tell us what you actually think about those things, we're going to be suspicious, right?
I'm all about answering questions clearly. So cross-examine me, Ukerist.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Simple question. In a Christian nationalist nation that you want, right? What would happen to me if I were to run for office, get elected, and then say, you know what? I renounce Christianity.
That's fine. Nothing would happen to you.
Nothing.
Let's first of all, this is all implying that I'm also a politician somehow, and Eli Nix is calling the shots. Let's just go with that.
So just to be clear, neither of you support religious tests for offices in your ideal. You don't
religious what?
Religious tests for offices. You don't want representatives to be Christian. You don't want
to again. So first of all, here's two things I want to point out.
I'm sorry. Hemming and hawing. This is what we're concerned about.
Okay. Well, I'm addressing it. So I mean, interrupting and just screeching, hemming and hawing into the microphone while I'm addressing what you're bringing up is spurgy. So first and foremost, I think that again, these the freedom of expression that we have today is a part of the Christian ethic that would continue to be upheld. If you get into a problem like, let's use your Puritan books, for example, and let's say that there was an Orthodox majority, and you're saying, oh, well, I'm afraid that if let's just say in this hypothetical that Orthodoxy is the dominant force in the Christian nationalism, right? I don't think, at least when I say I don't think Orthodox are going to make you not be able to publish your Puritan book, you don't have any more justification to say that they're going to than I do to say that they're not going to, other than mine is based off the Christian ethic that would be antithetical to freedom of expression, which we've all agreed on this panel, you guys have conceded was rooted in Christian ethics.
Yeah, hold on. Answer his question. Will I have to be Christian to run for office? Will there be a religious purity test?
Okay, here's the second point. I got screeched at him and hawing when I said I had a second point. So again, I don't think that there's any reason if we uphold the original Christian ethic of freedom of expression. However, if it became more rigid, right, and it said, you know what, actually, we don't want to allow non-Christians to run for office, you can't tell us why, if that supports a broader Christian ethic, why that would be wrong in your view. And that's what we've been asking of you, is even if we said sure.
Fundamentally illiberal. It would be against the Constitution, which you agreed and ceded to was brought out from a Christian ethic.
So all I have to say is that in the most ideal Christian ethic, we would take the best parts of the Constitution and freedom of expression and apply that as accurately as possible.
Which parts are the
not here's the problem. Here's the problem is that if by democratic election,
Bill of Rights would you get rid of?
I'm not talking about getting any rid of part of the Bill of Rights.
You said we would take the best parts, which implies you would leave some behind. I am asking you to be specific. You have again failed to answer his very simple question, sir.
I'm answering them in good faith, bro.
A religious purity test in your ideal system of whether or not someone has to be Christian in order to run for
what if we use
office.
Liberal democracy and freedom of expression?
You have not
in
answered
order
the question once again.
Well, I don't have a fucking crystal ball to look in and see if they're going to
deny
laws.
Christ 3 times, and you have failed to answer our question 3 times. I find that interesting. Will we go for a 4th?
You are like Spurgatron 5000, dude. It's kind of hilarious.
Or am I simply trying to hold your feet to the fire and get you to be?
I'm right here with you, dude, and I don't dodge the way you guys do.
Question.
What?
I will.
Wick, if we did have a purity test, what would be bad?
I'm asking if you will
underneath the Christian
ethical system. And if it was elected through democracy.
I'm not arguing for it. I'm just asking
again,
what would be bad.
Are you going? Once you answer my question, I will answer yours. Will you have one in your ideal system?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
Let's do it. Just because you've annoyed me so much, I'm going to have a Whick test, and it says if you're Whick, you don't get to run for office ever. So just because I don't want to hear spurging on the television.
If you are asking me why it is bad to have religious purity tests for people who hold office, it's because I am anti-DEI. I don't want, right? I want the best person for the job in my public officials. I want the person who is capable of governing to the best of their ability in my public officials. I don't want them to be decided based because of their skin color, because they happen to be a certain religion or not be a certain religion. I want them to be based on merit and merit alone, because I think that leads to the best outcomes. That's why it would be bad to have a religious purity test.
So wait,
I am
I think it's bad on your end. The reason why I think it's bad on your end is because during the stabby period, you guys were forcing everybody to take their 5th booster shots, and people were pious.
You keep saying you guys.
It was almost damn near religious the way people were saying this. Oh, I have my 6th booster shot, and we were fighting this. Christians were fighting against this. How would this be?
You know that it was Christians who implemented that.
But we're cohesive on our end. This brought us together in unison against this tyranny, this tyrannical force that you guys have brought upon us. We fight this with every tooth and nail. How would this be bad? You've not actually reconciled any of this on our end.
Can I
still waiting?
Can I clear first? Again, the you guys thing. You're imputing views to us that is just ridiculous. It's insane. This has happened like 5 times at this point.
So when I say
let me clarify the publishing point. Let me clarify the publishing point. Let me clarify the publishing point.
Let me clarify
the publishing point. Because I'm not saying, Eli, that I think the Orthodox all dream of a world where they can ban my Puritan books, right? What I'm saying is, when we've asked you guys about, let's say, blasphemy laws, you've at least been ambivalent about whether or not those might exist, right? You haven't committed one way or another whether they would. Okay, fine. I'm not saying they will or won't. But do you not agree that by hemming and hawing on that, by introducing the idea of an established church, you have not introduced the concept of an established church that says, hey, we get to define what blasphemy is. Those Puritans over there who affirm penal substitutionary atonement, which is contrary to Eastern Orthodox doctrine, they can't publish their books. Maybe they can teach it in their homes. Maybe they can educate their kids, but they can't sell it in the marketplace. Well, is that not a door you've opened by being at least ambivalent about what blasphemy laws constitute and about established churches?
Well, here's what I would say to that, is that agreeing with what Whick said about how, certain fundamental elements of freedom are co-patriots with the Christian ethic, I would say that if the Christian ethic is applied in that standard, and especially if these things are voted on democratically, which is the whole system that you're saying we need to uphold, is democratic free expression. Well, if democratic free okay, but what happens whenever constitutionally? First of all, don't interrupt me when I'm talking. Whenever the constitutional freedom of expression, and we vote on it in a democratic way according to the Constitution, and the majority vote will of the people says to do these things that you're bringing up, then what is your pushback to that if it happens through that?
Prevents majority from voting on certain things. So the majority democracy cannot vote for certain things. They cannot under a constitutional democracy.
Okay, then why are you so fucking worried about it then?
Because when we ask you under your Christian nationalist framework, would you do away with these things? Your answers are either yes or very vague.
So we've said the whole night that we're going to use the system in place. If you say the system in place prevents it,
what happens?
What? No, I'm saying the system.
You have said, and I quote, that you will take the best parts of the Constitution, the good parts, which implies that you will leave the bad parts out. And I keep asking, what are those bad parts? And you
we're not implying that, Wick. We can't make an assertion of saying we like the good parts without saying we're implying that we're taking out the bad parts or anything. We've never asserted this, Wick. You're making an empty assertion right now. You're making an assumptive claim.
I am quoting you directly.
Well, I know, but here's the thing. When I say taking the best parts of the Constitution, it means using them. It doesn't mean discarding the rest of it. So that's what you're wanting my argument to mean, and it's not the case.
That's a falsification.
You have suggested,
again, no, Wick, here's the thing. You just said, I want to hold your feet to the fire. You just said the Constitution doesn't allow for X, Y, and Z thing to happen. And then we say, that's okay, we're going to use the system in place, and the system in place doesn't allow these things to happen. And you go, but what if it does? So, yeah, if it doesn't allow it to happen, great. We'll use the system in place and it won't happen.
The reason why you're all over the place is because you have no consistent moral standard to which to adhere to, nothing that's consistent, no framework to adhere to, nothing that you can move forward with. That's why your argument is failing right now, Wick. We're still waiting on some consistent cohesion on your end. We don't hear the cohesion. That's the prompt right now. As far as cohesion, we got that part. We won the part of the argument. We're still waiting for a demonstration of cohesion on your end, which we failed to see during this whole argument.
And let's ask hypothetical real quick.
Argument and understand what I'm saying is not a knock on me, sir. So first of all, okay. Second of all, I have asked you specific times, me and Ukerist both, on specific issues, religious purity tests, and also will he be allowed to publish his views if they do not align with Christian nationalist values and things like that. And on both these questions, in the first, you eventually, after we pushed and pushed and pushed, acknowledged that yes, there would be religious purity tests. Okay, that is antithetical, okay, to the Constitution of the United States. So you cannot say, it is contradictory to say that we would not change anything about the Constitution and we would have religious purity tests. These are not.
Let me dismantle what you're talking about.
Square this circle for me. You have to, again, you have to reconcile the difference, and you have failed to do so. Again, I'm not done, and I'll finish real quick. This is the thing. You have failed to answer any question. You have failed to defend any assertion. You have failed on every single aspect of this debate.
You're contradicting yourself right now, Wick. We've asked
all I'm saying is pejoratives,
dude. Let
how this is baby's first debate here, and I'm stuck debating morons instead of people who actually know what the fuck they're talking about. You couldn't even cite to me how many amendments there are on the Constitution, right? You don't know what you are referring to. You don't know the differences between the denominations of Christianity. You do not. There are many things you just do not know, and it becomes frustrating because I have to teach you this mid-debate.
Wick, I'm debating Ewok and Timu Ned Flanders right now. All I want to do is get answers to questions right now, which we haven't gotten. You're positing saying we're not answering any questions. Meanwhile, you haven't reconciled these things, and I'll run down the line with them right now. You've never reconciled how there's any cohesiveness on your end. You've never reconciled how your viewpoint is supreme compared to ours, and not to mention that, but you've never reconciled your whole end of the argument as far as saying, well, yours is bad in anything else. All you're just doing is citing preferences, but no consistent standard. You're failing in this regard. All these are questions that you've yet to answer, but accusing us of not answering questions. Hold on, I'm not interrupting you.
You said I
never answered our questions at all.
Let him finish. Let him finish. Go ahead.
You've never answered our questions at all, Wick. We've asked you these questions the whole time. Those are 3, mind you. I can keep track, whereas you can't. You're making a broad assertion, which actually Ukerist has said, oh, you guys are being very broad. Well, you're being very broad and not answering these questions or reconciling this. We're still waiting on something that's at least a compelling argument on your end, and you've never been able to reconcile this or offer anything to replace what we have to offer. We have solutions, whereas you don't. You're just complaining about problems while not offering anything in place. Can we hear anything from you that's compelling?
And I want to get in here real quick and just point out, I see, like, first of all of the pejoratives, the ad hominems, and the condescension coming from Wick in that last monologue, I think was super uncalled for. I think I have tried my best to answer your questions, to try to understand.
It was earned.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I think that kind of rhetoric is the example of somebody losing the debate because they're getting frustrated. But what I would say is that here's what's happening. We're saying we're going to apply the Christian ethic and achieve dominance using the system in place, which means following the Constitution. They are trying to drag us away and make hypotheticals around if we were to throw out the Constitution, which we never implied we would do unless it was to happen. If there's, again, I'm not a constitutional expert, but if there are somehow means to make amendments in modernity that is voted on and done in a populist way, then guess what? That's done legally, and that's the will of the people. So we're not talking about, we're not talking, no, hold on. Never once did we say we're going to get into power and take the Constitution and shred it into 1,000 pieces. But that's what your entire argument has been based around whenever you're criticizing what's going to happen with the religious purity test. All I have to ask you is that constitutional? No? Okay, then it wouldn't happen. Because we're going to use the system in place. We're not calling for the system to be thrown out.
You answered that it
has been abused on your end.
Are you lying then or are you lying now?
Okay, so I will clarify that if I said, okay, yeah, well, first of all, I said I would have a Whick TV test and it would just be a picture of your face on a piece of paper. And if somebody ran for office and they looked, and even if they looked like you, I'd say they couldn't run for office. But then besides that, I would say, yeah. So what I'm saying is that if there is a legal and constitutional way to do so, I don't have a crystal ball to see if the will of the people in a Christian nationalist, Christian-dominated culture would do that. If they did, and they did so legally, what's the problem if it's by the will of the people and it's constitutional and it's legal? How about you answer that one?
He hasn't even answered the three that are positive.
No, let's let him. I wanted that one. If it's by the will of the people and it's constitutional and it's legal, and if it's not legal or constitutional, then why the fuck are you worried about it?
Because when we ask you different questions, as I've said, on what would it look like once you've achieved the dominance, I do not. Again,
no, but answer my question.
No,
you accuse us of not answering questions, Wick. You answer the one I just did right now. If it's legal and constitutional,
lying based on your other answers.
Problem?
I think you're lying based on your other answers.
Just answer my fucking question, Wick.
I am answering your question. If you listen, like he who has ears hear, right? Because when you are not consistent in what you say. You speak out of both sides of your mouth.
This isn't an answer.
You say on one hand that sure, like your brother Martae here is saying, sure, we will have religious purity tests. And again, it took forever to get that straight answer out of you. You guys really don't like straight things, and I could tell that already, right? Well, the second thing, however,
how is
right,
gay?
You say when we challenge you on this,
accusations answering the fucking question.
Hold on, you guys, they've used ad hominem all night. They called him.
I haven't used one.
Flanders. They called me an Ewok, and when I strike back, suddenly, hemming, hawing,
because you struck first.
I'm asking you to speak to me.
Eli and Martae, let Wick finish, please.
Yes.
Like him to answer.
This is the problem here, and this is why you guys just fail at debate 101, is because you can't have consistent responses to very simple, again, cross-examinations of your position. You have yet to even give a coherent position that stands up to any sort of pushback whatsoever, because we ask very basic questions and then you give contradictory answers. You will say one thing, Martae will say another, and when pressed on it, and when again, you realize, oh, I didn't understand that question or the implications of my answer, you will try to change it in order to look better to the crowd. My assertion here, sir, is that what you were doing is you were hiding the ball. You want a thing that is far above and beyond to what you were presenting. And I think that mine and Ukerist questions have exposed that to the audience, but I will let the audience decide. I will let them weigh our arguments.
Filibustering for time and not answering
I will
my
let
question,
them decide who is found wanting in this
Okay,
debate.
So back to my question. You just did your monologue and didn't answer shit.
You gotta listen, buddy.
Gotta listen, buddy. If it is legal, constitutional,
it's not.
Okay, so then it wouldn't happen. Whenever you brought up, okay, so again, I was assuming that this thing, like that, you wouldn't.
Are you lying then, or are you lying now?
Don't interrupt me. You just went on a freaking.
I will interrupt you as much as I fucking want.
Sarah, come on. He just went on a monologue. Can I respond to it?
Quick, I told him to
he
stop
just went
while
on a
you
monologue.
were talking. It's time for you to stop while he does. Come on,
okay.
boys. You know the drill.
So Here's what we presented in the beginning, is that we would follow the system in place. So when he asked me questions about a law that's outside of the system, and then I'm assuming that he listened to my opening statement and that he's presenting something that maybe would be, I'm not a constitutional law expert. So I assume that he was presenting something that actually could be possible within a constitutional law. And now he's going, no, it's not possible. And I said, well, my whole fucking opening statement is that we would follow the democratic process in place. So it's an irrelevant, retarded fucking question, and it's totally deriving from the point that we're making that we would use the system in place. So again, so it's not me lying, it's me assuming that you were listening, which you've clearly demonstrated that you're not.
So if you're saying that we don't have to make any changes whatsoever to the law, right? That we don't have to make any sort of changes to the culture, then what are you advocating for exactly?
You dishonor that to the system, to the democratic system, to the Constitution. If we show up and make laws that say we're going to ban pornography, or we're going to make IDs, or we're going to say we don't want gay marriage anymore, or we want the state out of marriage, those are things we could do constitutionally. Huh?
Those aren't Christian nationalism. That's not Christian nationalism.
Those are laws based on that's laws based on Christian ethic.
You could do that now.
Yes, and we're going to, and it's going to be a Christian nationalist movement because we're going to have the dominance of the culture.
So you agree, Wick?
Okay, debate over, dumbass.
You agree, Wick?
Liberalism wins again. Thank you.
Okay, and guess what? We're going to use liberalism to further Christian nationalism.
Eli,
you don't even know what Christian nationalism means.
You know what's funny, Wick? You'll pause it. You'll say, hey, they've been hitting me with ad homs the whole night. You know what? I had to hit you back because I retaliate. Christians are allowed to retaliate and defend ourselves. I haven't hit you guys with ad hominem attacks the whole night. This hasn't been a constant mainstay of my position. I don't do that. Matter of fact, Eli is better than me not attacking you, actually. So it's like you don't have a consistent standard even in this. Are you even in the same debate? Because I prefaced this to you. I said, during the stabby jabby, when we've had this, we've seen what you've done with power, which is not benevolent at all. Matter of fact, there's piousness. You've never addressed this. And when you say that nobody's addressing anything, there's nothing that's consistent on your end. Hold on. I've let you talk. I've let you filibuster and rant. Let me land this plane at least. Something you're not able to do because you
Amelia Earhart, do it.
You've even told Sarah, no, I'm not going to let you land this plane, whatever, right? But I will at least adhere to structure, whereas you guys don't. You go up against your own values and vote against your own interests. Matter of fact, it's more authoritarian on your end because I have to take another booster shot or lose my job. You've never seen this in the Christian ethos on their end of that spectrum. I don't understand what part of the debate you're into. Or a part of.
What do you think my stance on vaccine mandates is?
Degeneracy and chaos.
You're not even my stance on vaccine mandates.
Gentlemen, before we dive into the stabby stab conversation, we are at that point where it's a good time to go ahead and kick off our closing statements. And then when we get to open panel, we can really dive into the stabby stab scenarios. We can dive into who's holding who down and putting thumbs over whomever and so on and so forth. And I can't fucking wait. All right, Ukerist, if you'd like to kick us off with your closing statement, please.
I would love to. Is this 4 minutes as well? I'll time myself.
Yeah, typically about 4 minutes, but
okay,
yeah.
I'll keep it under. But just to summarize, I will concede to Eli and Martae that they don't want to throw out the Constitution, but I would make an argument, it would take more time to do, that to use the method of amending the Constitution to then down the road make it impossible or nearly impossible to re-amend it for the thing you've just changed would at the very least be a subversion of the intent of the amendment process and would, I think, constitute a fundamental change to the constitutional order that would be worth being concerned about. If I am Ned Flanders, I will take it as a compliment, but I take umbrage to the idea that I'm Timu Ned Flanders because that would suggest that I'm Chinese in origin, and as a heritage American, I object to that characterization, okay? Several times, Martae used this phrase, you've failed to present a consistent standard, which is a great presup line, but I will just remind my opponents that presuppositional apologetics in the form they make use of it, including the transcendental argument for God in the form that they use, is a Protestant innovation through the Dutch Reformed tradition. Shout out to Cornelius Van Til, Protestant W you. I think my opponents are so used to arguing against godless secular subjectivists that they're just unaware that there are other approaches to political theology within the Christian tradition. They expect anybody who uses words like freedom or tradition, or excuse me, toleration, to use them in a sort of postmodern way with no content, or to refer to sort of absolute freedom or something like this. And of course, I would agree, I will concede right off the bat that no Christian could possibly believe that freedom, if it's considered a positive political good, means I get to do whatever I want. But also, they're so used to those sorts of opponents that they just think that, banning abortion, overturning Obergefell, and so on are distinctively Christian nationalist positions rather than conservative, Christian conservative, etc. I think the problem you may have seen tonight, I don't know, I have no idea how the audience responds to this, but is that my opponents, I think, have shouldered the burden of a term, Christian nationalism, that has a lot of baggage. And they use that term, I think, to provoke opponents, usually secular opponents, but that the term itself doesn't grapple with the kind of complex questions that are raised by political theology broadly in the Christian tradition, which is, I think, amenable to a broad variety of political theological positions. Now, as a Protestant, I'm obviously a huge fan of quote mining from the church fathers, but I think if I took Augustine, Basil, Chrysostom, and others, I could construct a fairly robust anti-CN case from their interpretations of just those two parables I mentioned, the parable of the wheat and the tares, and the Good Samaritan. And so my positive view, if I'm just going to lay it out here in the 1 minute I have left, it's kind of up in the air, but I'll say on the record, I think I'm very sympathetic to the arguments presented by Oliver O'Donovan, who's a filthy Anglican, in his book, The Desire of the Nations. And he concludes in this book by saying the idea of natural right, which is distinct from natural rights, natural right, is an inheritance of Christendom and Christianity specifically. And under that heading of natural right, we can derive 4 principles: natural equality, the imago Dei, we're all made in the image of God; affinity, which is love of home and tradition; oikophilia, in other words, which I think the CN people rely on very heavily, which I would agree with. But also, this is the one I think the CNs are weak on: reciprocity, the idea that each home and homeland and community can interact with other homes and homelands in peace and with love and with xenophilia rather than xenophobia. And then his final point is creaturely cohabitation, that is like stewardship of the creation. I don't think that's Christian nationalism. I would distinguish, as a good Protestant, we distinguish. The Bishop of Rome hath no authority in this realm, and neither do the Eastern Orthodox. So thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. I'll stick around for a while. Yeah.
Thank you, Ukerist. Wick, to you.
Sure. I'm going to start with a quote from Locke. Okay. Locke, as I believe, looked at the horrors of the Reformation Wars, the 30-Year War and things. And this is what he says. He says, "It is not the diversity of opinions, which cannot be avoided, but the refusal of toleration to those that are of different opinions, which might have been granted, that has produced all the bustles and wars that have been in the Christian world upon account of religion." The idea that Christianity is culturally cohesive or morally cohesive is given the lie when you look at the history of Christianity itself, when you look at the history of Christian nations and how they have interacted both internally and externally. And I think provided several pieces of evidence for this, and I find them convincing. If my opponents don't, that is on them, not on me. I would argue that the people, the reason we have less conflict today than at any other period of history is because of liberalism and that foundational liberal order, which, yes, I will grant, again, it comes up in part through Christianity, right? But when we strive to take away that liberalism, when we strive to undermine the liberal order, right? When we strive to take away the pillars that hold it up, we are introducing the state of affairs that will lead once again to the horrors of the past, and I don't want that to happen. My opponents have not answered any of our questions clearly until we pressed and pressed and pressed, and then when they realized the implications of the answer of their answers, they have quickly retreated. I'm just going to say it clearly. I think that what they are advocating for publicly is different from what they want privately. I don't think they are being honest with you, and I think we've demonstrated that on that panel. Thank you, and as always, Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Absolutely, Wick. Thank you. Martae, to you, sir.
Okay. So a lot to contend with right now, but also not a lot. So on Team Ned Flanders' side, he posits that we have tag, right? Of course, you could say that Protestants own this, but which came first, the bird or the egg? The bird or the egg? So if we think about this, what came first, historically, or EO came first? Where did this come from? It came from us, because there wouldn't be you without us. You're talking about fractionalized Christianity that came downstream from us. Also, back to the Ewok right now. He's actually mentioning Locke, which was full of contradictions, especially his conflict on his views of property, the need for government, especially regarding the accumulation of wealth and potential for inequality. So it's like there seems to be a meshing of things that are inconsistent on their side. First of all, the three things that I've asked if there's any cohesiveness on their side. They've never once reconciled this. I've also asked, is there any way that they could justify that our supremacy would be bad? Never went ahead and provided anything that's compelling. Overall, their whole argument fails. I mean, you could talk about Ukerist and his well-read studies, but nothing's come about this. It's like there's nothing compelling on his side or the Ewok side. It's like I have nothing left right now because there's nothing that they've given me. They've never actually offered anything that's contrary other than to themselves. It's crazy. I mean, it's like they're voting against their own interests by way of speech right now. Nothing compelling on their side. I've asked. Wick throughout this whole debate has said, you're not answering questions. We've asked. Surely you've said we probably went the long route of asking this. Meanwhile, these three things that I've asked, you've never reconciled at all. I've given you plenty of examples. DC, the stabby jabby, everything else, when you guys are more authoritarian than us, but nothing's been answered. We're still waiting. And it's like, if you take away Christian ethics away from society, you're going to have more corruption, chaos, and less cohesiveness. But if you add more Christian ethics to society and you inject it in there, no pun intended, you're going to have more cohesiveness. More liberalism, less cohesiveness, more. I concede and give it to Nix.
Thank you,
All
Martae.
right.
Eli, to you.
Thanks, Martae. Thanks to both my opponents, and obviously, of course, to Sarah for giving us this platform to, do our thing. I just want to say that what I think the biggest problem for what they've been doing to our position is they desperately want us to be arguing a position that we're not arguing. So they desperately want to use whataboutisms whenever we say, no, we want to do this within the current system that we have. And then they use whataboutisms that go outside of the current system that we have. And they think they got gotchas whenever we are just assuming that they're taking our word for what we actually are saying that we will do. And again, as you can see in Wick's closing statement, is that he's got these assertions about our secret nefarious plans. Those aren't arguments. Those are just assertions. Mr. Ukerist said that if he would have brought, a case from the church fathers in this, and that would have been used, but he didn't. I think that there was definitely a slippery slope being used, because so often they brought up the violence and atrocities that came from these certain systems. And whenever I bring up and say, hey, we actually have something much closer in history, like slavery and like the atrocities committed under our current system, does that mean that it's inherently bad or we should scrap the whole thing? Well, of course not. So again, it's all about fear of what might happen instead of actually addressing what we say we want from it, and saying that that's not true Christian nationalism. Well, I don't think you understand the definition. Fine, whatever. We gave you our definition. This is our movement. This is what we're calling it. If you want to call it something else, fine. Call it Christian populism. Call it Christian dominance. This is what we're using. I think that we can use the terms of nationalism in order to make this implication. And I think that we get a great job defending that against this. And the last point I want to make is that, he said a lot about the words liberalism, but not the actual problem of secularism, moral relativism that we're actually pushing back against. And if I think both these guys, again, Wick conceded he does have an objective standard, and it's basically the Christian ethic. We have Ukerist over here, who's a Christian, who said that there is no ethic superior than the Christian ethic. So honestly, I think there are plenty of concessions on their side that they're actually for everything we're saying, and they don't have a problem with it. They are just mad that it's I don't know. I don't know why. I think there's plenty of concessions. Thanks again, Sara. And if I could throw one, I don't even know if this is an ad hom because this isn't necessarily an insult, but Whick, I'm not going to call you an Ewok, but you do look strikingly like Bishop Mari Emanuel, and it's kind of blowing. Every time I look at you, I'm like, oh my God, it's video game Mari Emanuel. Anyway, I wanted to throw that out there. So you can. I'm told I look like all kinds of shit, so you can throw that at me too.
Fair enough. Thank you, gentlemen. I am officially dropping the link into the chat for the open panel dumpster fire. If you'd like to join the panel, now is the time to jump backstage. And I would do it very quickly because usually it fills up. There it already is going. Okay, so over to the super chats. Go ahead and starting, and let me preface this, gentlemen. You're more than welcome to respond to anything. But let's try to keep it short and concise so that we can move on quickly. That panel's already filling up back there. All right. Trib One says, ultimately, Christian nationalism is a form of secularism. The deunification or denominations of Christianity is evidence for that reality. Any thoughts? No.
Well,
No?
I guess I would just say that, if it was an Orthodox Christian majority, that would be a prescription to that problem.
Okay. And then Trib also says, define the tenets of the Christian part of Christian nationalism, and is that a form of Christianity viable in America? If not, where?
Well, I would say that a lot of the things that have been brought up, a lot of the things that make America America are actually already presupposed and woven into Christian ethic, like, again, the respect of free will, as it says in the Bill of Rights, that all men are created equal. It's all, again, I think what we got away from in the debate is that we're leaning on a fixed and objective standard rather than submitting to the kind of subjective and influx view of a majority of people that can really take you in any direction. So I think that is viable in America because we've seen it, but I think that we're pushing back against the rejection of it.
Okay. Kokomo kicking us off with the dono goal to say, getting it started. Thank you so much. Joel says, so funny, the secular atheists don't mind using force. Why shouldn't Christians?
I don't think anyone should be using force to enforce their worldviews. To the extent that secular atheists do it, they are bad. And why would you want to do a bad thing that they're doing?
You mean like booster shots and stabby that I brought up and everything else that's happening in DC?
Hold on.
I mean, it's a plethora of things we could bring up.
Again, Republicans,
pretty authoritarian on your end,
who are mostly Christian, are the ones who did that.
A lot of liberalism injected in this and secularism that promoted this.
Okay,
not a lot
I'm
of Christians.
vaccine mandates, and I'm a liberal.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. We could talk about exceptions to Ewok's rules, but we're talking about the majority. When we talk about the majority of liberalism, that's been promoted on that end.
I'm saying that your positions, what you're advocating for, is closer to that than me.
No, that's blatantly untrue.
It's just true.
Fair
Policing
enough.
language and everything else, but go ahead.
I'm not the one introducing blasphemy laws. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. K2 says Sara needs a drink. Yes, it was. I don't know. I think I had enough to drink Friday night, and I think I'm okay with not drinking for a while. Saturday was not a pretty day for me. K2 says it's getting gay now. Ryan should be happy. It's okay to be gay. John Mosman says, gay. Did someone say firefighters? That might give everyone a breather, so let it rip. And I will save this, John, during open panel, and I will definitely be throwing. I have a feeling it's going to happen sooner than later. Narita says, I'm an atheist, but if the shit hits the fan, I'm with the Christians and will help drive out the Muslims and the Wicks.
Oh, yeah.
Wick.
I support that all day. Even
Wicca's
atheists are on our side, right?
Out. Us Wicca's rising. Wick it up. Okay, we're wicking out.
Power of the Wicks.
Mm-hmm.
K2 says, chat, hit the goal or Sarah's mom will ground Sara if the goal's not achieved. Yes, you all heard my mama in chat. She all told you to hit the goal. And Mama Tomato doesn't say much often, but she told you what to do. You better listen or else I get in trouble. Trib says Wick's selling himself short on the bodybuilder take. He literally gets paid to take his shirt off. Also, I forgot to say Trump supporters crime in red states. Trump supports crime in red states.
It's true. If someone in my audience gives me $50, I will take my shirt off for them if they want to see my Wookiee body. Okay.
Ooh.
They're paying for me to vomit. I don't support that.
I don't know. We had a great night, me and Wick. We did a whole fight the mod stream, and all the guys had to take their shirts off, and then nobody wanted to pay to make them put it back on. It was quite weird that it took that long for them to. It was like an hour and a half, I think it took them to get you guys to put your shirts back on.
It took a bit.
I thought that was strange that they want to see you guys with your shirts off.
And hey, Sarah, can I throw one thing out that should have been in my closing too? I just want to give a quick recognition to Mr. Martae here, who did come in last minute, 24-hour notice. I think that, I prepared all week for this. Maybe that's an insult on my part if I didn't do too well, but he had 24 hours notice and came in clutch, and for that he deserves W's in the chat.
And to the fig leaf, right? Like the olive branch, if you will. Yeah, anyone who shows up in the arena is deserving of respect, right? So even if you win, you lose, right? As long as you play the game, you are deserving a modicum of respect. And Martae, thank you for being here, and thank you for filling that slot. I just wish, like, Jake Rattlesnake, Andrew Wilson, they keep dodging me. It's weird how Andrew Wilson offered me $20,000
every time any one of us shows up.
to go 3 rounds in a boxing ring with
us
him.
to do that.
He publicly offered me that, and then when I set a date for him, he decided not to say anything. That's really weird.
Yeah, but it's really consistent and cohesive for the same result to happen as tonight, right? So if Jake showed up, Andrew showed up, I showed up, same thing. Crucible win all day. So
if you say so, I'll let you.
Next super chat. Moving on.
Fair enough. Ask and ye shall receive. Be careful calling on Papa there. The Christians that are pro-divorce and pro-illegal immigration are liberals, which is I don't know what that is. Indictment on liberalism, not Christianity. Any thoughts?
The crickets are loud on that side.
Well, I mean, what do you want me to say that's just wrong? I mean, no. There are plenty of Christians that are anti-divorce that are liberals, right? There are plenty of Christians who are anti-illegal immigration that are liberals.
Yeah, just saying that isn't a demonstration, as you've never done this whole debate. I mean, not to throw a lasting jab, but I'm just saying.
What would you like me to do to demonstrate that you can be anti-divorce and still be a liberal?
If you can demonstrate,
do you disagree with that statement?
If you can demonstrate how Christian superiority isn't better, or for a society more cohesive, which you haven't done. I mean, you haven't even done that. We haven't even got that part.
I've demonstrated.
I think also Christians could still be pro no fault divorce for the secularists while still upholding and maintaining like their religious values towards
our
marriage,
ethos.
I think.
Yes,
right.
Sarah's quite correct about this. Yes, we can still maintain some consistency and cohesive standard, which even you would agree on, Wick.
Because if you're getting married at a secular level, right, not within the church, and then you just go and you do your normal, you get your marriage certificate, you have somebody marry you, and you call it a day, and woo, you're married according to the government, and you don't get married under any Christian standard, then who are we to say you can't get a divorce because you didn't get married under any Christian standard to begin with? So,
well, here's the thing, Sarah.
The answer, just real quick.
We'll allow you to fail. That's how we seek redemption, right? So, if Christians are quite benevolent to allow you to fail at secular marriage, what are you going to seek? Something that's more optimal. We'll allow this, right?
You did this in your closing statement. And you keep doing this. You're saying I'm not answering your questions, but I've given you the answer to the questions. A demonstration that pluralism and that the liberal order is superior, if you will, cohesively, like both morally, I would argue, and culturally, is to point out is a simple question. When I ask Christian cohesiveness, which version of Christianity, right?
So when we look
at
that
question, is
look
kill
at
shot to your argument. And the reason that question is a kill shot to your argument is because there are plenty of very, very strong differences in policies and in culture between different denominations. I would simply ask you, right? What's your view on no fault divorce? There was a whole other country that was formed. A war was fought on the subject of divorce, okay, within Christianity.
Right. But I think that in modernity, I think that you're really stretching when you want to pretend like Christians, if you want to use that monolithic wide umbrella, have like a bunch of vast disagreements. I think that, like, without getting into every nitpicking piece of doctrine, I think that anybody can say it's pretty self-evident that Christians as a catch-all have way more in agreement than they have in disagreement.
All right. As a non-religious person, I think secularism benefited a great deal from the good parts of religion. That's why I like liberalism and secularism. The Protestant Reformation was literally liberal. Wow, say this 3 times fast. Was literally liberalism injected into Christianity. Liberalism caused destabilization in culture and moral cohesion.
Okay, well, that is untrue. So the reason
Can you demonstrate that?
No,
Sure.
it's actually, I think
So,
that
no,
even secular or Protestant people would agree that that's true. I don't know where you say that's not true. Please demonstrate.
So when you say the Protestant Reformation was literally liberalism injected into Christianity, explain, elaborate. What do you mean?
Well, like you're saying that. So did you disagree with the super
No,
chat?
I disagree with the super chat, but you said you agree with it and everyone agrees with you. So I'm simply asking you to explain it to me. Pretend I'm a child, pretend I'm dumb.
Okay,
and
well,
explain to me what liberalism had to do with the Protestant Reformation.
Well, let me make sure I'm getting my definitions perfect.
And Wick, are you asking us to pretend, or can we do this for real?
Okay.
Well, no, it's not. I have a dictionary on these because I like to make sure I'm working with accurate definitions. But basically, in the Protestant Reformation, now we could get into a really long conversation about this, but initially the rebellion against indulgences, even and I'm speaking as an Orthodox Christian here, but that rebellion was justified. However, it was kind of a snowball effect that continued to go and go and go. All of a sudden, people's individual interpretations of Scripture became prominent. All of a sudden, an individual leader's sermon became the focal point of worship, and all of this kind of alludes to liberalism's individualistic mentality. It was exactly what we're pushing back in our argument, that there was a church, a visible institution that had a rigid standard that kind of kept everybody in line, and Protestantism was a snowball effect from a rather good grievance at first, but turned into all these different sects that just got more and more individualistic and charismatic.
Yeah.
So I would say
even if we stick with it with Catholicism, there were plenty of schisms throughout where there were periods where you had dueling popes who would try to kill each other to see who was the real pope.
Well, again,
right?
You're talking to Orthodox Christians, so we would call the Catholics the first Protestants. So if you really want to get that technical, I mean,
True. Yeah. Protestants, Catholics. Yep.
Okay, but again, that has nothing to do with liberalism. I just want to point that out. But carry on.
No, you asked us a direct question.
I just pointed out how it did, and then you say it doesn't have anything to do with it. That's crazy.
What you said
about the
was
super chat,
just not true.
Liberalism.
Okay.
Absolute freedom is not in the Bible. You are lying. Absolute freedom is not in the Bible. You are lying.
Good thing I never said absolute freedom.
I don't even know who that's addressed to be honest.
I don't know.
I think that's
go
to
either
you
way.
guys, actually. Absolute
shadow.
freedom is not in the Bible. A kissy cat coming in to say, oh, hi, Sarah. Hello to you, Miss Kissy Cat. Crucible Crusader says, Wick reminds me of an Ewok, LOL.
Oh, God, somebody agrees with me.
I could see, because the way the hat, like all we need are the little ears, and it's just perfect.
And keep in mind, Ewoks
I love the
destroyed
Ewoks.
the
Ewoks
Ewoks destroyed
were
the
my
Empire.
favorite, and they
Okay?
were my favorite.
You got to pull up Bishop Mari Emmanuel. I think that one is really close to it. That's not even an insult. Man, if we could get it on screen, it's pretty awesome. Hold on.
Trib One says, by the way, religious principles being brought to secularism doesn't mean going backwards is good. A lot of medical advancement happens through atrocities. Fair enough. And also says, is the Old Testament the soul of your Christian nationalism, or is it the New Testament? And is there more than one interpretation? Askers want to know. Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
the beard. And he's a very
It
you know what?
does.
He's a very cool guy, cool looking.
Well,
right?
and you got to see him talk too, because it's like, and I've got big tombstone teeth as well, but he's got the same thing. You guys do look like, yeah. I got him too, but he looks just like you. It's kind of funny. Yeah.
Wick's more Ewok than a Mari Mari.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
Absolutely.
Were Christians forcing other Christians to wear masks and not go to church due to C-19, or was it liberal governments? But liberals are pro-freedom.
So
I was
the
hinting
answer to your
around this
question
in
is
the whole debate.
yes. Literally, most of our government is Christian. So yes, literally, that's what happened.
Well, again, so they can be, and I don't want. I've accused of slippery slope all night. I've tried very hard to not go into true Scotsman. However, I think that we have a lot of culture and politics where people use those as voting points while not adhering to any Christian ethic whatsoever. So that's kind of what we're driving at, is not like a true Scotsman's fallacy, but whether or not an ethic is being adhered to in a rigid kind of way. So,
but that again goes to my argument when we say the problem with your stance is that there is no coherent framework among Christians, because I can simply ask, what kind of Christian are you? And I think that again dismantles the argument, as we just saw, where if a Christian disagrees with you and puts forth policies that you disagree with, you say, well, we don't want to call them no true Scotsmen, but they're not really Christian, right?
Well,
and I think that just is a good demonstration of mine and Ukerist's argument.
I see what you're getting at, but it's like, it's not no true Scotsman if somebody is just literally appropriating a title without any actual commitment to the ethic. I mean, like, that's like, it's not being fallacious to say, well, this certain set of behaviors are doing immediately disqualifies them. That's kind of no true Scotsman. But when we say, yeah, people use that title all the time, but do they actually are they practicing what they preach? Are they living this out? And are their decisions being informed by this ethic? I think that's something that can be fleshed out way easier.
Fair enough. Kissy Cat sending another 10 to help complete the goal. You guys almost failed, chat. You almost just took an L immediately, and I wasn't even going to open the panel. Kokomo also sending in their big 15 to hit the goal. And then on Cash App, How Long Nate says, these closeted commies must destroy Christianity for a big $100. He sent $100 just to say that to you guys.
Wait, which one of us are the closeted communists?
I don't know.
Okay.
Definitely me.
Because I am very anti-communist.
This is the big reveal, guys. I'm not sorry.
Fair enough. Creedog says, made up imaginary scenarios that none could even ever answer. The chicken or the egg, tiny Ewok wicket.
Which one of my imaginary scenarios that no one can even answer is he
you said a lot of like what ifs.
That's good super
what
chat.
if they did, but what if they did, kind of thing. And it's like, but we can't.
I'm asking you what you would do, right? What you specifically, Martae and
that super chatter was
Eli,
awesome. Go ahead.
Like, what would you do, right? Because I'm trying not to I'm trying not to strawman you, right? I'm trying not to say, well, other Christian nationalists say this, so you must be like them. I'm simply trying to get to the heart of what you actually believe, because I'll be real with you. Your definition was vague, as Ukerist said, to the point that it's like, what am I supposed to do with this? There's no there, right? Like, what do you mean when you say these things? So I ask these exploratory questions to get to the heart of these things. And it does make me suspicious when you have a hard time answering those questions.
Well, again,
I gave you a pretty definitive answer as far as what my definition was, and you declined to accept this. And then I asked you, are definitions in absolute? You agreed. You said, no, they're not an absolute, which means what I think you don't want us to do is to have our definition of what this would be. And it's like when we give you this, it just feels bad to hear this.
We want specifics. Your definition was, and I wrote it down, a governance by Christian values in a nation. Great. What does that mean? What does that look like? What are the implications? What are the policies? These are the questions we've been asking the whole time. So no,
I'm really sorry.
I want your definition. I don't want to put anyone's definition on you. I want to know what you mean by the definition you gave. That's all I care about.
Counted on that.
Well, and I want to be really clear. Like, I think that in my opening statement and several times throughout the debate, I've said, I don't know what you just said, but we said a dominance in the cultural and political life. That's a bit deeper than just
what I wrote down
political
was
governance.
And I agree with that.
when he was like, "Oh, I can't believe you're asking for a definition, but I guess I'll give one," and then he gave it, I wrote it down. That's what I was quoting back to him.
Okay,
you gave me a richer definition. Thank you, Eli.
But,
yeah. So Eli gave a better definition than you did. You didn't give a definition until you were challenged, so that's fine.
It's not that it's an inaccurate one. It goes a bit further than that. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Naomi sending her love. Horses in the chat for our darling mod Naomi. Everyone loves her here. Luke 6:29, Matthew 5:39, and Luke 14:26 teach to let people steal from you, not to resist evil, and to hate your family. Are these the best values?
Yeah, again, I'm not going to allow people to cherry pick Bible verses without taking the entire tradition and the entire ethos into account. So, yeah,
True.
I don't play that game.
Very Protestant of him to do so.
Cherry pick the sarcastic warlock says it's amazing to see the degen, dishonest, and gutter-minded Christians lose to a leftist. Well done, Wick. I hate agreeing with you, but I hope these two and their ilk never get the wheel.
I'm a Democrat, first of all.
I don't think that guy actually
different.
hates agreeing with him. That's what I'm going to say.
How long? Nate says Wick needs to practice. I'm guessing that was supposed to say steel man.
I'm guessing that was supposed to say Wick too. Practice spelling, buddy, and then get back
I think
to me.
we have a lot of truck drivers, so sometimes it doesn't always work out for them. We try to make it the best.
Wait, that's amazing. I love that. That's
yeah, we get a lot of them, especially on the late nights. We keep them happy listening in and tuning in, and
That's what I'd do.
They stay up all night driving. We
Hell yeah.
support
Keep on trucking.
Yeah, we support Amazon, Amazon, and all those deliveries making it their way to your homes, ladies and gentlemen. Wick still can't understand that what they want to do is promote ideology under the current framework, which means possible representation of proof changes with the focus on promoting good through the nation.
You just described liberal democracy, buddy.
Hey.
Yeah, and again, yeah, we described using liberal democracy in order to promote a dominance in the culture. That's
so. Are you suggesting that liberal
democracy
democracy and Christian nationalism can be coterminous?
Yeah, I thought it was Christian nationalism is more of the influence it has on the government, not necessarily changing the government framework.
Well, exactly. Their whole argument all night has been to say that we're saying something we haven't been saying. So
if you don't want to change the government, why are we having a conversation? You don't want to change the government, okay?
Because it would make laws that we know you don't like. That's what, at least maybe, I don't know about Ukerist, but definitely.
Hold on. Secularism makes laws I don't like, right? A lot of things make laws I don't like. That's not me rejecting a thing wholesale, right? But as long as, look.
You mean like your constitutional argument? Saying we can't have one without throwing everything else and making this assertion we've never made.
Certain of the things that when I've asked you these questions because I think they are fundamental and core to what I believe a liberal democracy is, such as freedom of speech is a big one, and also not having religious purity test for their leaders. And I think these are two very big, very important to me, right? Core principles of what I consider a liberal democracy. And when, again, I pressed you on these things and you're either failure to answer, or are you saying that yes, we would have these religious purity tests, or yes, we would have some form of blasphemy laws? That does, again, I think, contradict your statement that we don't actually want to make these changes to the Constitution. I think
look, dude,
contradictory.
Here's the problem: is you keep saying that we're not answering the question, and I'm answering you directly right now. If it can be done through the current system, and it is the will of the people that vote on it to do so, yeah, bless you, Sarah. Then that's the will of the people under the Christian ethic. But we're not advocating for tearing up and throwing away the system in order to just do away with people's liberties. We want to respect those liberties through the lens of the system. But if it turns out that way through a Christian ethic, then that's a different argument than just saying that, we wholesale throw out the system. So this super chat hit the nail on the head.
All right, two more, and then we're going to open the panel. I'll save the rest of the supers for after we get the panel going. How long? Nate says, Sola Scriptura only needs to using scripture to enslave Christianity through cherry picking for the benefit of the atheist.
So, I was raised in a very religious household, Mormon, to be clear. And I did serve a mission. Like I promise you, I know more about the Bible than you do, Mr. Hall Longney. And at any time, if you guys wanted to have a debate on biblical messaging or what Christ meant in the parables or the culture of the Sadducees and the Pharisees and how that relates to Christ's life and teachings, I would be happy to have a discussion with any of you at any time. Yeah, I think that I don't need to cherry pick scripture in order to prove or disprove a thing. I have, again, refrained from citing scripture in this debate for exactly that reason. But I do think that overall, Christianity, as spoken and taught by Christ in the Bible, does lead to kind of a pluralistic, universalist mindset. And I think I could back that up given enough time. But that wasn't the debate, so I didn't.
Fair enough. And Christian nationalists denying their position more times than Peter denied Jesus. Cock crowing on this debate, and they have been found lacking.
No, it was good. I didn't see any consistency on their end as far as like cohesiveness. They've never addressed this once. They don't even have a position. I mean, basically, like when we asked them about cohesiveness, they've never answered this. They've never asked why supremacy in Christianity is bad. I mean, I'd argue that the other side is faulty. So.
Yeah, and it's not a denial of our position. It's that they're trying to make our position something that it wasn't. I think that anybody who has retention skills throughout the debate will understand that that's what was going on.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and open the panel and let's have some real fun, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. All right. Most of you, all of you have actually been here before. You all know my rules. Don't break them. And for anyone that's new backstage or who will be joining the panel as well, please be reminded that I don't like it when you interrupt each other, and I especially don't like it when you interrupt me. People will be sending super chats. I will display them at the bottom of the screen. However, when I start to read them, everybody knows what to do here, right? Can anybody tell me?
Shut up.
Thank you. You shut the fuck up, all
up.
of you. There you go. That's how we kick it. All right. I believe, Ryan, you were actually first one backstage in line. Go ahead, kick it off.
Yeah, fantastic. So I'm actually surprised this didn't come up in the debate at all. But according to Pew Research, only 10% of the United States are adherents of Christian nationalism. About 20% are sympathetic to the position, but 37% are skeptical, and 29% completely outright reject it. So if cohesion means unity of the whole, and 70% of Americans are either skeptical or reject Christian nationalism explicitly, then the idea that Christian nationalism is more cohesive is kind of absurd on its face. You'll hear, I mean, we've all throughout tonight, we've heard a bunch of different ways to deflect this, and this will continue all throughout the night. We'll hear things like some whataboutism, like they'll bring up some other divisive issues, which we can agree are divisive for better or for worse, but they're certainly not inherently coherent or cohesive. They might bring up that they want to have a hypothetical future majority one day where they can then start to use the laws that exist now to push their agenda. But again, right now, 70% completely reject this. or are at least skeptical of it. And they might also say that the division is worth it to push forth true moral virtue. But again, that's just accepting that division needs to happen for their worldview to come through. So I think that's just what we've seen all night, and that's what we will continue to see all night. It is obvious. The premise is absolutely hilarious given that data. I'm going to post the Pew Research that I'm referencing in both the back chat as well as the
it's going to fail,
regular
Ryan, because I'll ask you this right now. Who supports Christian nationalism more, Christians or secularists?
Christians? I don't care. Why?
Okay, great. Who are there more of in the nation? Is this more of a Christian nation or a secular nation?
So 10% of Americans believe in Christian nationalism explicitly. All right. See you guys in 15 minutes. But yeah, again, only 10% agree with you. Sorry.
No, that's false. That's
I do gotta use the restroom real quick. I will be back.
Martae. Okay, so you and me. So Ryan is right, and your argument was just that because there's Christians, Christian nationalism is supported by Christians. But okay, so Christians have there is a group called Institute for Family Studies. The sole purpose of this group is to convince people that evangelical men aren't abusive. And when you factor in the fact that Christianity is anti-women, it's we see gays experiencing 5 to 9 times the level of violent crime in the United States. You're already ruling out 60% of people who, if they vote their interest, are like, this is really stupid. And that's not even touching secularism. That's just touching people who have common sense.
Can you point out where Christianity is anti-women? Because we praise the Theotokos, which is the Virgin Mother Mary.
So the Martae, no, the think tank.
I let you talk.
Having a think tank
Hold on, Doc.
Okay.
Doc.
What's up, Sara?
Listen, all I'm saying is that Christians respect the Mother Mary. Is that not true? Also, moving on to this, when you say that Christians aren't the monopoly of belief system in America as far as when we lean towards values, it's true. So when he cites stats like we could say 10% are Christian nationalists, yes, we could say the subset, but overwhelmingly Christians are different. We can say that there's 2 sects. We can say Christian nationalists and then Christians, which are Protestants and everybody else. There's an overwhelming majority, which he's cherry-picked. This data cherry-picks. It's basically...
they're not cohesive?
That's not the point. That's not the point. Martae.
So my question is are there more secularists that supports the Christian ethos or Christians? He never answered this. He actually ducked out for no apparent reason.
When Christians aren't abusing the Mother Mary, it turns out the data doesn't show that Christians are intrinsically more or less violent. It just shows that they ignore violence. And use your investigative brain a little bit. If you have to put out fake research to prove that you're not abusive, what does that say about your actual values that you live out versus what you want to advertise on the internet?
Well, that's a fallacy. You're not pointing out who the source is. You're just making this empty assertion saying that you have to do this. It's not me pointing it out. It's not whoever. You can't even point toward what the source is or how biased it is. For instance, you're just citing empty resources.
It's very biased.
To which it's
very biased.
There's biases in everything, right? So if we talk about this, it's like you're just citing data that we can't even look at.
Not those types of biases, though. Martae, see, a strong secular atheist man, a strong secular atheist man like me would say that, look, this group has been punishing the gay community and punishing women since the 1980s. A strong atheist, secular man like your buddy Duck would do anything to keep my family safe from these social forces that seek to make them less than what a person actually is. And so that's the big difference here. Is I'll stand up for half the population. I don't give a shit about my name.
Duck, your moral relativist position can't even tell you what those things are wrong.
That's it.
How are we harming gays by banning gay marriage? They can have a civil...
You should at least be curious.
This message is sponsored in part by...
I don't blame you 100%, Sara.
All this gay talk and everybody interrupting each other, please stop. And just a little word of announcement. I'm setting up the raid right now to head over to the Gauntlet. I'll drop, you got exactly 2 minutes to make your way over there now before I go ahead and shut down the tomato side. Otherwise, the mods, please continue dropping the link to the Gauntlet live stream in the chat so they can just make their way over. Now you have 2 minutes to do it or catch the raid. Okay, back to you.
I think like Nathan is going to turn me into a Christian nationalist because I will agree Institute for Family Studies is very biased. You should read every study they put out with an acknowledgement that they come from a very right-wing perspective. But that does not mean that everything that they're putting out is made to justify the abuse of men against women. But also, I will say, so first, that's my first objection. Hold on. I'm registering one objection.
Some of it, and it's okay then, right? What a man. What a man.
Please let the Ukerist finish.
My second objection is against Martae because, again, he just did the thing where he was like, look, there's the Christian nationalists, and then there's all the other Christians, right? And so when I said at the beginning that he was imputing to me views I didn't have, that's what it was, right? Either you're a Christian nationalist or you're a filthy lib.
Give me a second. Eucharist, are you Eucharist? Are you anti-gay, or do you believe that your stance on abortion makes you anti-women? Just be honest.
I don't think my stance on abortion makes me anti-women. My stance on sexual morals you would probably say makes me anti-gay. I wouldn't call myself anti-gay.
Okay, so you're not a Christian nationalist, but you believe in policy that comes from Christian values. So you're not really with Whick in this, and you weren't the entire night. Is that right?
Hang on.
Nathan. Nathan.
I was trying to say he was kind of conceding.
You believe in policies that come from Christianity.
No, I don't.
Do you believe in freedom of speech?
Freedom of speech doesn't come from Christianity. You quoted Mill.
Yes, it does.
Mill, you don't need to be a Christian to believe in Mill.
You don't need to, right? But much as I don't need to be a Christian to believe or support something that a policy that a Christian would support, right? Necessarily, right? I don't need you to be a Christian to just acknowledge that some of the things that Christians believe in and support that you would too. That doesn't make you Christian. That doesn't make you evil or anything. There are, for example, USAID. I don't know if you guys know this, right? But a lot of USAID was set up and fought for by Christian charity organizations who saw that they wanted to help foreign countries in Africa and these other impoverished places. The government was doing a very poor job of doing it, and they weren't allowing Christian organizations to go in there and to be receive funding and things like that. So they fought in the courts for years to get the right to receive federal funding in order to go in and do their charity work, and they won finally, right? So USAID, in a large way, is Christian. It's Christian. If you support USAID, you support a lot of Christian charities.
That makes zero sense, Whick. That makes zero sense.
Okay, what about that did not make sense?
Go ahead and
finish. What the fuck about that did make sense, Whick? That's my thoughts, Sarah. What the fuck about that made sense?
I don't think I need to address that.
To the bag. As usual.
I also he gave the minimalist definition of Christian nationalism I'm objecting to, which is if you have a policy informed by Christian ethics, you're a Christian nationalist. It's just insane.
Well, again, this has been the whole.
I'm officially shutting the tomato side down now. Catch the raid over to the Gauntlet. I've also dropped the link in the chat. If you want to move over, go ahead and do so now. Thank you.